pickup, enjoying the gentle light of the full moon, each holding a cold drink. They were parked on the highest hill in their flat, brushy county. The lights of their small hometown twinkled below them. It was a lovely, though somewhat sad night, perfect for remembering old times. Do you remember a night like this, with a full moon above us, sitting out here with our friends, just playing guitars and singing the songs we made up on the spot? Will chuckled. Yeah, I remember. We were around 17 or 18. Earl paid someone $20 to get us 2 bottles of something strong, and by this time of night, we were feeling pretty good. The next morning was rough. I still can't stand that stuff. But we created some great songs that night. By the way, what happened to that hit song you promised would be a success? I play that song at every show in the third set, as long as the crowd is excited and ready to have fun. It always gets a big reaction. We even have fans who follow us and sing along. I appreciate the little money I make, but why haven't you recorded that song? For some reason, music labels aren't interested in the title or the lyrics. Come on. The stuff I hear from cars in every city makes our song sound like something from church. It's just a love song with some bold words. It's not hateful or disrespectful. Okay, it's a little rough, but it's not as bad as some other music I hear where strong language is everywhere. You've been in the country too long, it's called hip-hop now. Then get a hip-hop label to record it. I've written so many songs over the years, and they're all just as wild. I've created a dozen in the last month. Get a label to record those, and we can both make a lot of money. I know you're joking, Will, but seriously, come on. The woman you were with pushed you away, and now you can't even see your kids. How many more signs do you need that it's time to move on? Grab your things, your computer, and whatever clothes you have left, start your truck, and let's hit the road. Even the folks in Nashville see your talent. We'll do great, I promise. That's a tempting offer, Woody, but part of me still wants to stay and fight for things here. The problem is that Donnie has his uncle, who is a judge in a strong position, making things really difficult for me. Well, that's not the only issue. Her family believes all those lies too, and you know how much influence they have. Will took a big sip of his beer and thought about the tough situation they were in. What's going on, Woody? How can anyone think I hurt my kids and my wife? Has anyone ever seen a bruise on them? Have they gone to the doctor for anything because of me? No, they haven't, because nothing happened. The real problem is, how do I prove nothing ever happened when my wife tells lies, and my kids, who are too young for school, aren't seen as reliable witnesses? Plus, the judge is her lover's uncle, and the social worker is her cousin. Will sat on the back of the truck, beer in hand, took a sip, and asked the hard question, I'm in big trouble, aren't I? Dawn found them on I-35 north of Waco. Woody and Will had a large cooler full of beer and another one packed with venison and sausage in the back of the truck. The second seat held the few things Will decided to keep, and it was only half full. Starting fresh meant leaving behind anything that reminded him of his wife. But as he finished packing, he realized he hadn't kept much that he truly cared about in his 28 years. Maybe the next 28 would be better. Woody, who usually slept late after long nights, was so pumped up on coffee and snacks that he wouldn't stop talking. After hearing for the 14th time how great this trip would be, writing songs and having fun on the road, Will finally told him to calm down and focus on what was next. How many more stops do you have planned? Just 3 more, buddy, and all are easy to reach from Nashville, Woody said. 3 more stops to finish the contract, then they could head back to the studio. That made Will feel a bit more hopeful. But don't think you're just along for the ride, bud. You'll be playing and singing with me. I got the okay to add you to the lineup. You won't make much money, but you'll get food, a place to stay, and transportation. Plus, you'll have some fans to meet, if any catch your interest. We don't always play in the biggest venues, and sometimes we have to make do, but there will be a few who want to meet the musician even if they don't know his name. 2 weeks later, they, along with the studio musicians the label arranged for, were on a leased bus heading for the Coyote in Charlotte, North Carolina, a cozy dance spot, and then down to the Savannah Arena for a larger concert. After that, they were set to perform at an outdoor venue in North Charleston called Around the Bend. Neither of the 2 concert venues were full, and Woody thought it was because his second album didn't do well. It had songs written by the label's hired songwriters. The songs were skillfully made and aimed at young people who buy a lot of music today. However, they were missing what his fans really wanted: depth, feeling, and emotion. They were all show and no substance, and Woody's fans wanted something real. They preferred the raw sound from his first album and his performances in lively dance halls or big outdoor concerts like the ones Willie Nelson holds in Texas. Instead, the record label polished him up, gave him experienced musicians, and sent him out to impress fans along the Florida-Georgia line. The fans liked him about as much as he liked them, and after a quick rise in popularity, his career was falling fast. Luckily, this was his last commitment to the label, which had lost interest in him as quickly as the new country fans they tried to reach. In their final practice before heading to the Coyote, Woody handed out music for some new songs we're going to try this weekend. The musician, she couldn't really call them a band, since they would be parting ways soon, just shrugged. They were getting paid no matter what they played. After practice, Woody offered to buy everyone a round at Commodore Grill, but only the drummer Gary and the bass guitarist Danny were in. After a few pitchers, Woody and Will both liked a young singer-songwriter who played keyboard. Her smile lit up the room when she played light, cheerful songs, but they were drawn to her deeper side. "Boys, you know this is our last chance," Woody said to Danny and Gary. "The music we're playing isn't what I love, and I'm going back to my roots. That probably means I'm moving to Austin with Will here, who is going to be my bass player. Sorry, Danny, but he also wrote most of the hits on my first album and is my best friend. Dude, I play 7 instruments, including harmonica and accordion, but I'm best at steel guitar, fiddle, and banjo. Any real country band needs all 3, and I can even play a good saxophone if you want a bluesy sound. So if you're asking if I'm interested, absolutely. But only if you're really going back to the good stuff instead of the pop country. I'm still single and available, and I hear Austin has some great women. Sounds like you might still need a drummer, and I'm available too. My wife served me divorce papers last month. She said I wasn't meeting her needs, so she moved on. But that was fine with me. What she was offering just wasn't worth the trouble. Will, with Gary on drums and Danny on other instruments, we just need a keyboard player who can sing backups, do duets, and take the lead sometimes. Have you seen anyone lately who might fit?" "Yes, she's off stage talking to the manager. Does anyone know what she likes to drink?" "Dark beer," came a reply from the table next to them. "I know because I bought her several in hopes she'd go out with me, but it didn't work. Maybe it'll work for you." Will stopped by the bar, got a dark beer, and walked over to where the 2 women were chatting. He kept a bit of distance for their privacy, but the singer noticed him and paused. The stage manager turned to Will and asked, "Can I help you?" "No, ma'am, but maybe this talented young lady can." He looked at the singer. "We're sitting right over there, and we were really impressed by your songs and performance. Could we chat with you for a few minutes about a band we're starting? I saw you all and appreciated your support. You're starting a band. I'm not sure I match Mr. West's style, but I'd be happy to listen. Is it all right if we continue our talk later, Dot?" "Sure, Lila, anytime. It might not matter anyway if you take the job." Will introduced Miss Lila Livingston to the guys. She sat down and asked, "How did you know I drink beer?" The cowboy at the next table lifted his hat, and Will gave him credit. Lila smiled and said, "Maybe I misunderstood your intentions before. I apologize and thank you for remembering." "No, ma'am, you didn't misunderstand, but I appreciate your thanks. You're a wonderful person, and I'd love to hear you sing in the morning. If things don't work out with the band, I'll be here for the next songwriter session." The conversation with Lila went smoothly once Woody told her he was stepping away from the pop country scene. Will asked how many more songs she had that explored deep topics like the 3 she had already performed. Woody, along with his backup musicians, Will on bass guitar, Gary on banjo, saxophone, harmonica, and accordion, and Lila on keyboard, went on a short tour to wrap up Woody's contract for his second album. This tour was necessary because the audience reactions were mixed at best, and sometimes not very kind when it came to most songs from that album. What they did enjoy were the new songs we are trying out. These songs were rough and not finished, but they had strong stories that made people want to dance, laugh, or even cry. Once their obligations were completed, Gary collected his final paycheck, parted ways with his manager, and said his farewells. The label offered a disappointing contract for a new album, and he turned it down with confidence. They parted ways without any hard feelings. Danny had a nice passenger van, Gary drove a new SUV, and Woody owned a fancy white truck. Lila, however, had her clothes, personal items, keyboard, and a couple of other instruments, but no vehicle. Will was the first to offer a ride, and she gladly accepted his help. Their small group set out on I-40 at 6 a.m., passed through Memphis to Jackson, took I-30 through Little Rock and Texarkana, and continued south of Dallas on I-35E. They took breaks to use the restroom, stretch, and bought Slovacek's fruit and poppy seed kolaches in West. They planned to save the kolaches for dessert after their meal at Heitmiller's Steakhouse in Waco, not far down the road. They arrived in Austin at 7 p.m. and went straight to the apartments that Woody had booked online. The apartments were old but had been partly updated inside. The great part was the location close to running trails by Lady Bird Lake and just a mile from Barton Springs and its green fields. They were also only a short distance from Austin's vibrant music scene. Woody had enough money for a 2-bedroom place for himself, while Gary and Danny shared another 2-bedroom, as did Lila and Will. Woody also rented a space to practice further out on South First, near the food trucks. After picking up the key from a mechanic next door, they dropped off their instruments there. The space was solid and had been used by another band before. The owner was pleased to have new tenants, especially since property taxes in Austin were high. Will had a moment of reflection when he realized it took only a few trips to move all his belongings. He wondered why he had so little to show for himself as he approached 30. The apartments were unfurnished, so Woody had rented some nice furniture. They were unsure if they could buy it later, but they hoped they could. Interestingly, there were no washer-dryer hookups, but there were 2 laundromats on site. Will felt like he was back in college, but the others seemed unbothered. Will had what Woody called a treasure chest of songs he had written over the years. These songs celebrated important moments in life and expressed sadness over losses. They also captured the early days with his loving wife, the joy of having children, and reflected on the changes that came with time. The contents of the cardboard box had piled up quickly since she and her partner took over his life, including his children, home, and belongings. They might have taken his money too, but he had set up a trust for his kids when he started earning a good income. He moved most of his cash and investments into the trusts, leaving only a small amount for himself. His attorney and good friend, Robert Hart, became the one in charge of the trust. When Will decided to leave with Woody, he quit his job and vanished, giving Hart the power to manage his affairs. Lila had her own collection of music, a different kind from Will's. She liked folk and blues, while Will enjoyed country, rock, and more. There was some folk influence in his music too, and he loved the storytelling style, especially the kind from Lila's home in the Great Smoky Mountains. They worked hard to turn their words into songs that connected with people and made them want to dance. The more skilled band members took the main role in this, while Lila and Will supported each other as they improved their lyrics. Most of their work happened in their apartment, while Woody, Danny, and Gary spent most of their time in a new studio. After being away for 10 weeks, Will borrowed Gary's phone to contact his attorney. As expected, the shrew had changed the divorce papers to include abandonment and was asking for everything. So far, Robert hadn't replied to her demand for an overview of Will's finances, but he needed to respond soon. He had the details but wanted to discuss them with Will first. "Yes, you can share all my financial information. It will show that my savings were used to set up the trust fund for my 2 kids. Besides my retirement account, all I have is my old truck and that house she insisted on buying. The bank owns more of it than I do, and she can take it if I get to keep my retirement plan. Otherwise, we can sell it and split the money. There is enough money in the trust funds to support the kids, but the shrew doesn't get any of it. She needs to give you proper receipts for expenses related to the children, and you can pay them. No gym memberships for my 4-year-old son, no beauty treatments, and none of those fancy items for my 6-year-old daughter. I'm also not covering full-time childcare just so she can relax at home. If she doesn't work, I won't pay for childcare. If she gets a job, I'll pay for half. Understand? You know her uncle, the judge, is likely to be tough on you, Will. He may order you to pay some type of support and continue covering the house expenses. Forget him and her. She moved that wealthy man into the house I've been paying for. They can either leave and sell the place or deal with the payments themselves. She has used all the money she will ever get from me. He can ask for anything he wants, but I'm far away, and it doesn't matter here. Tell them this. You can't get something from nothing. My only income is a few $100s a month from past work. I'm living on very little, with no money coming in soon. Remind her that accusing me of mistreating my wife and kids has made it hard for me to find a job. I'm just moving around doing odd jobs to keep a roof over my head, and it's all because of her and the dishonest person she's with. If she would take back her claims, agree to fair visiting rights, and accept the split I mentioned, I would sign the divorce papers right away, and they could get married and live happily. Finally, Robert, tell her that what goes around comes around, and she should expect to face consequences in about 6 months. Robert reminded him to stay calm, avoid Texas, or at least the Bexar County area, and asked how to contact him if needed. Will said to call this phone, which belonged to another worker like him. It had a Kentucky number which he thought would confuse anyone who might get it. When Gary saw the expression on Will's face when he returned the phone, he asked if everything was okay. Will answered, "No and yes. My wife hurt me badly. Now she wants to take everything from me. That's the no part. The yes part is I plan to take a break from my usual work today, put on my work boots and clothes, and clean up the mess along the creek near our decks, so when I relax on the deck I can see nature's beauty instead of trash. After that, I'll clean up, put on my dancing shoes, and check out 6th Street. Maybe see what all the excitement is about. I would like to do this with friends, but I will go alone if you all want to stay focused on your work while I enjoy myself." As they cleaned up their part of the creek, some neighbors came by and asked if they could join. Will and a couple of neighbors had tools to help cut and pile the big branches easily and clear away the brush along the creek that blocked their view of the water. Well, the creek probably belonged to the city of Austin, but no one worried about getting in trouble for tidying up a bit. When they finished, they had cleaned the entire stretch of creek next to the apartments and built a large pile of debris for the city to take away. One of the neighbors said she would call to get that sorted. They decided to move to the picnic area near the pool to enjoy a cold drink and celebrate their hard work. People arrived with their folding chairs and drinks, still dressed in their messy clothes, and started chatting with each other. As the sky grew darker, Will stood up and said he was going to take a shower, get dressed, and continue the celebration on 6th Street. He invited anyone who wanted to join him. About half of the 30-something people from the cleanup crew thought that was a great idea and decided to change, agreeing to meet at Maggie Mae's in an hour. Once cleaned up and wearing his nice boots, Will plopped down on the uncomfortable couch and called for Lila to come out. When she stepped out of the bathroom, he quickly changed his opinion of her. She was small, about 5'3", and slim, weighing around 110 pounds. She had lovely facial features and always looked nice if you liked long, straight hair and a fresh-faced look. Typically, she wore loose, muted tops, baggy pants, and worn canvas shoes. She looked like someone you'd want to protect, making it easy for her to blend in. But tonight, her hair was in a long braid. She wore makeup, blue eyeliner, and lipstick, along with a fitted red and black shirt and tight black jeans paired with shiny black boots. He stared long enough to cause her to blush and become a bit defensive. "Stop staring at me like that." "I'm sorry, Lila. You surprised me. I didn't know there was such a striking person underneath those baggy clothes. If you want, I'd love to accompany you tonight and help keep away any unwanted attention. Just a minute. Let me get my belongings because with the way you look tonight, I might need them." "You're being ridiculous," she said, her cheeks still pink. "I know I'm not much to look at, but I appreciate your kind words." Taken aback by her response, he insisted, "Come with me," and pulled her in front of a mirror in his bedroom. "Are you not seeing what I see? You're a beautiful lady right there. Don't tell me you don't look like a model because you definitely do. Just wait until Woody and the guys see you." When they walked to the van, the surprised looks and compliments she received confirmed Will's prediction, making her face turn a deep red. Will noticed she seemed pleased, shy, and defensive all at once. "Wow, Lila! Why are you hiding all that under those clothes? You look amazing!" "We have to get you off that keyboard and in front of the microphone when we play live," Woody said excitedly. Feeling embarrassed but also pleased, she climbed into the van and sat in the back seat, right behind Gary. Will hopped in and took a seat next to him in the middle row. The apartment complex had a few adults around Will and Woody's age, but most of the residents were younger than Gary and Danny, who were 26. Most were students from the university, and they were used to balancing their studies with having a good time. Tonight, they decided to party with their new friends. Will realized that no one really knew how old Lila was, and no one asked. She looked young in her casual clothes, but when dressed up, she appeared like a polished lady in her mid-20s. He thought he would find out at the right moment, but it didn't really matter to him. They parked several blocks away and were relieved to find a spot. Woody led them to Maggie Mays. He had played there a few times early in his career, and the manager recognized him right away. They hugged, reminisced, and insisted Woody and his friends sit at the special table by the bar that was reserved for VIPs. The first round of drinks was free, and when Woody mentioned that more people would be joining them, they cleared more tables nearby. When the waiter came for drink orders, Will, a dedicated beer drinker, asked if they served real margaritas on the rocks, or if they were the typical weak ones from a machine. The waiter didn't take kindly to that and made sure Will they were neither from a machine nor weak. Will ordered a margarita on the rocks. Woody watched the interaction and joked, "Oh no! Watch out, everyone! Will's drinking tequila." Gary asked, "What's the story there?" Woody laughed and said, "Let's just say our quiet friend likes to talk a lot and can get a bit feisty after a few drinks. We need to keep an eye on him in case he gets too carried away." They all laughed, imagining Quiet Will as the life of the party or a fighter. In total, 22 others from the complex joined them, and the lively atmosphere drew in more people. By the third drink, Will was indeed chatting away. He told jokes, danced with everyone in their group, led applause for the band, and after a fourth drink, managed to convince the band to play a song for line dancing. He encouraged almost everyone in the place to join in, which turned the dance floor into a fun mess. The band took a break, and then returned to playing classic rock tunes from the 1970s and 80s, and the dancing started up again. Will woke up feeling very sick, with a headache and an upset stomach that couldn't stand any light or noise. When he was able to see again, he realized he was in his bed. It was daytime, and he could smell a strange mix of perfume and bacon. He tried to get up, but his stomach and head hurt, so he lay back down and closed his eyes. "Are you awake?" a woman's voice asked a few minutes later. "Just about. Who are you?" "You really don't remember me? I'm the one you promised all sorts of fun to if I came home with you." She handed him a glass of water and some pain relievers, encouraging him to take them. "Sorry, I think I had too much to drink. Did I make a fool of myself?" he asked after swallowing the pills. "Well, you're only awake because Lila and I helped you from the van, down the stairs and into the apartment. You made us laugh, but then you went to the bathroom and took a long time. By the time you came back to bed, you were already snoring before you could show us any of those tricks you talked about." "Wait, Lila helped you?" "Of course. She was a good sport, even though she had a bit to drink too. We all did after you insisted on shots at midnight. Good thing Danny didn't join, or we would have all been stuck in the van. I'm really sorry about all that, Mystery Blonde. I feel awful. Can you tell me your name?" "You really don't remember anything? I'm Lena Carolina Novak. I'm another musician in Austin. You picked me up and brought me to your table to meet your friends. Ring any bells?" "Sort of. I think I remember bits and pieces, but come eat," Lila called out. Will got up, stretched, and noticed Lena smiling at him, realizing he was still without clothes. He thought, no point in worrying now, and quickly put on some boxers and reached for a shirt. "Forget the shirt. Lila will enjoy this. She definitely noticed you last night. I thought she might try to climb in bed with you, and when I got close, she got jealous and insisted I sleep in her room. I can hear you. Stop joking around and get in here or I'm tossing your food." Lena laughed. Will, feeling a bit better, asked, "So she wanted you in her bed? Are you two together now?" "No, but she thinks you're really cute and has quite the crush on you." Will was shocked. He was about to ask more when Lila appeared in the doorway, wearing a big t-shirt that didn't quite cover her light blue shorts. Will noticed that she had long legs for someone her age. He was curious why, after weeks of wearing old clothes, she suddenly looked so lively. You both need to come eat right now. I won't let Lena keep saying things about me, Lila shouted. Wait, are you twins? You look just alike except for your hair color. Even your names, Lena and Lila. You are the same size with lovely legs and tiny waists. You must be related, Will said, surprised. Lena pulled Lila into the room, put her arm around Lila's waist, and walked with her to the kitchen. She whispered to Lila, He's looking at us. Show him that you can dance. They both giggled and moved playfully, laughing when they noticed Will blushing. He quickly composed himself and followed them like a loyal friend. The girls watched him as much as he watched them during breakfast. They made him wash the dishes and teased him about his appearance while he was at the sink. He joked that he would splash them with water if they didn't stop, which made them run off to the bedroom, giggling. Before leaving, Lena turned and told him, Go get dressed. Woody wants us at the studio in 20 minutes for practice. Will had never seen this side of Lila. Instead of being quiet and shy, she was now cheerful and playful. He realized Lena must have a big influence on her. Then he thought, for practice? Was Lena joining the band? That raised many questions, but he felt excitement about what the day could bring. Woody could play a few instruments besides the guitar, like the keyboard and trumpet, but he was mainly a guitarist. Will, who was not a professional musician, only played guitar, and Danny was the drummer. Lena played the violin beautifully, and then switched to fiddling, sounding lively and fun. After her short performance, she mentioned she could also play the banjo and steel guitar. The talents of Gary, Lila, and Lena meant the band could play many styles of music. Woody, Gary, and the girls were excited as the morning passed into the afternoon. They enjoyed exploring their talents together, feeling inspired. Before long, they realized they were hungry, so they walked to the food trucks for a late lunch. They sat at a picnic table under a big old oak tree and relaxed in the shade. Lena brought a folder with her, and she quietly chatted with Lila as they looked through it. Twice, they glanced at Will, and then Lena asked, Will, do we need to get you drinks again to hear your story, or are you ready to share it sober? Because we're about to go buy a bottle of tequila and some limes if that's what it takes. We can't carry the sadness and anger from your songs without talking about it, but Lena says you've never said anything when she's around. So, will you tell us? Or do we need to stop by Twin Liquors? Woody looked at his friend and said, We've made a lot of progress already. Let me pick up some beer on the way back to my place and we can hang out on my balcony. I have plenty of chairs, and I think it's time you shared your story with the rest of us. Music from Woody's first album played softly in the background. The warm breeze of an April day in Austin flowed around them, and everyone turned their attention to Will. I don't have much to say. If you put my songs in order, you will know the story of my adult life. Woody left and found success in Nashville with the songs we wrote in high school. I married the homecoming queen and settled down with a good job working for her dad, making a lot of money. We had beautiful children that the proud grandparents loved to spoil, and I finished my degree at night and online. I loved my wife deeply, and she loved me too. That was the problem. Her parents warned me, and I felt it inside, but she insisted that our love meant we had to get married. I was 18 and full of emotion, so we went ahead. For a couple of years, she was the ideal partner and a great mother to our small kids, but once they got a bit older, she wanted them to be cared for by someone else. She wanted a new car every couple of years. She wanted a bigger house because our 3-bedroom home wasn't nice enough. She needed new clothes, new jewelry, and many shoes. She pushed me to take promotions to earn more money so we could have better things, but she got upset with how much time I was gone for work. She didn't like me traveling but wanted me to become the regional manager, even though both her dad and I told her I'd have to travel a lot more. That's when she changed, becoming harsh and then unfaithful. Her parents practically stopped supporting her after she got involved with someone else and filed for divorce, claiming mental cruelty. When she got a court order keeping me away from my kids by wrongly saying I mistreated them, her parents were shocked because they knew I was a loving father. But when she stopped letting the grandparents see their grandkids, her parents stayed quiet about her false claims. Some of you might find what's coming difficult to hear, but Woody and I agreed to make an album called The Dregs of Humanity. It will talk about issues like people who hurt children, those who take advantage of others, dishonest folks, and the bad politicians and judges who help them. The main goal of the album is to go after my ex-wife. her partner, and the people who support them. Of course, we also wanted to make money, so we have to be careful. We wanted to be successful and avoid any legal problems. If people see it as mean or whiny, we won't achieve either goal. So, creativity is important, and having many talented people involved helps us take on this challenge. We want to find a new and unusual way to tell my story and respond to those who tried to hurt me. Yes, I know that sounds dramatic, but I don't have another way to fight back. Are we thinking something like moving from Nashville to Austin or something really different? Asked Gary. I'm not afraid because I feel free. We need to rely on our bold leader, who wants a new start, to make that call, Will answered. Woody paused for a moment and said, Everyone, I'm excited to be creative, but we must make money or this won't last. My main fans are dedicated country music lovers who like their music strong. The label tried to change my style to pop country, and it didn't work. The younger fans didn't come, and my true fans weren't happy. Just ask them about the last shows. The Billy Goat Hill pundits will grow their own fans over time, but we need mine first and then add to them. If you haven't listened to my first album, check it out to see what they enjoy. Ha ha! And then you can hear my second album and know what people didn't like. It was Will's turn to think for a moment. Billy Goat Hill pundits, huh? I like that. But the rest of this group has no clue. When shall we give them our music? I'm ready when you are. I don't want to lose my bass guitarist to trouble, and I'm not sure about your situation with the law. My uncle told me the ranch house is set for us whenever we are ready. Are you good to go? I've been ready. As far as I know, there are no issues for me, but I can check with Robert if you want. If he gives us the green light, when do we head out? Woody asked each band member, and they all replied, whenever. So he suggested, how about noon tomorrow? It's a 3-hour drive. By 11:30, they loaded the instruments into the van and began their journey south. Gary and Danny rode in the van while the others were in Woody's truck, with Will driving, Woody beside him, and the ladies in the back seat. Woody used Bluetooth to play his first album from his phone, and the others shared their thoughts on it. Then he played the second album, and they did the same. The second trip invited a lot more comments. Their only stop was to pick up groceries, drinks, and ice at the H-E-B in Pleasanton. Drinks alone filled a third of the truck bed. They got 3 ice chests to store everything. A big cooler held the ice, another carried the meat and milk, and the smaller cooler was filled with drinks and ice. An amazed Lila asked if they were planning to stay a month. Woody replied that they had bought enough supplies for 3 days, but they expected visitors. The ranch house was located on the Frio River near Tilden, just a few miles from Choke Canyon Reservoir. The river was flowing well because of the lake, turning it into a lovely spot in the dry part of South Texas. This trip was the first visit to the brush country for the girls from Tennessee and North Carolina, and the boys from Kentucky and Georgia. Woody and Will knew it could go either way. They would either love it or dislike it. This was true for both locals and newcomers, and many local kids left for school and never returned. While places like the Hill Country, Austin, and San Antonio grew quickly, South and West Texas saw a slow decline in people until a retired oil engineer discovered how to extract oil from shale. Now, more people had moved in, creating busier roads than the locals wanted, but they appreciated the business and welcomed the checks from oil royalties. Woody and Will watched their friends and were happy to see that no one looked uncomfortable, the way they had seen in the past. They exchanged smiles. They explored the ranch in a small ATV, observing the cattle, horses, deer, quail, and wild pigs. The newcomers were impressed, and as they enjoyed their chilled drinks, the cooler got emptier. By the time they returned to the house by the river, everyone was cheerful and chatty, and Gary needed to refill the drink cooler. Will cooked fajitas while others chopped tomatoes, lettuce, and avocados. Woody prepared fresh salsa using peppers. At first, much to the Texans' surprise, the Southerners called them wraps, but they soon realized these were fajita tacos once the salsa and toppings were added. The amount of drinks consumed went up as the peppers got hotter. Lila, Lena, Woody, and Will took out their guitars. Danny brought a tub, and Gary showcased his harmonica. They played around with a few George Strait songs, including All My Exes Live in Texas, which sparked a talk about the old Frio River where I learned to swim. The newcomers discovered that George grew up in nearby Pearsall, and yes, this was indeed the Frio River. They also talked about the headwaters, Garner State Park, Concan, and floating down the river, promising to do it one day soon. Each songwriter shared some of their own songs, and everyone enjoyed the music. As it got darker and people started to feel a bit tipsy, Woody sang his favorite closing song, When the Sun's Going Down over Choke Canyon Lake. After that, they all went to their rooms in the big old ranch house. Woody had the master suite on the north side. Gary and Danny had bedrooms on the same side, sharing a bathroom. Will's room was across the hall on the south side, near Lila and Lena, who each had their own bed. They shared a bathroom too. "Let me use the bathroom first," Will said. "I'll be done in 10 minutes, and you two will take longer. Come on, Lila. How long do you take to get ready?" "It only takes me about 5 minutes," he teased. Lila smiled and replied, "Maybe 6 or 7 to make sure I'm clean, but not more than that. I think we should go first so you can wait." "I have an idea. Let's share the shower. We'll save water and time, and I can help make sure you're both clean," Will suggested. Lena raised an eyebrow and winked. "That sounds like it might take longer than 10 minutes, but I'm in if Lila is." Lila blushed and shook her head. "I'm not ready for that, but thanks for the offer." Will playfully challenged her. "What? You can look at me when I'm naked, but I can't see you?" Lila turned a deeper shade of red, looked away, and quickly went into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. Lena and Will laughed. "How about you?" he asked as he moved closer. "I could help you wash very well if you wanted." She smiled and rested her head on his chest. "That sounds tempting, but I really need some sleep. Plus, I think Lila might be upset if we did that." "Don't worry about Lila. We're just friends and bandmates, that's all. We've never even kissed." "I know, but she has a big crush on you and gets jealous of any girl near you. I don't think it would be safe for us to shower together." "Okay. How about you just sleep with me and I'll lock the door?" Will whispered, giving her a gentle kiss on her ear. He noticed her reaction and smiled. "Let's give Lila some space," she said lightly. "I'm going to tell her that if she doesn't make a move on you tonight or tomorrow, I will. She wants to, but she's shy and a bit unsure of herself. Or, Will, you could just take her to your room and see what happens. That would end the waiting." "Not going to happen, Lena. She knows things are complicated for me, and I don't want to drag her into it. She has to decide on her own. With you, it would be all lighthearted, but Lila is different. You and I could be friends with benefits, but I'm not sure about her. She's more serious about everything. Tonight is just for us, Lena. Let's find out if we're a good match." Lena sighed. "As much as I'd like to get closer, I'm going to wait for another time. But if nothing happens between you two, I might just go for being friends with benefits and see where that leads." They shared a playful moment, then stepped back as Lila opened the bathroom door and said, "Lena, the shower is ready." After he took a shower and got into bed, Will heard soft voices through the wall. He listened, but couldn't quite hear what they were saying, so he joked, "If I hear any funny noises from that side, especially since you both looked great today, I might just come over." He heard giggles, followed by more sounds from both rooms. "I don't believe you. Unless you are both by yourselves, those sounds shouldn't be coming from 2 different places." There were more giggles and whispers, and then he heard one of them get into the bed close to his. On the other side of the wall, Lila was lying on her side, and Lena encouraged her to make some sounds. When she did, Lena playfully lifted Lila's top and started to kiss her gently. Her hand found its way around Lila's waist, and she started to tease her. Lila gasped quietly, looking surprised at Lena's boldness. "I've never," she managed to say. Lena continued, making Lila feel things she hadn't before. Lila's shy responses turned into genuine sounds of enjoyment. As Lila started to get lost in the moment, she responded to Lena's touch and let herself feel every sensation, forgetting about anything else. Lila collapsed onto the bed exhausted, while Lena leaned down and gently kissed her. Lila didn't respond at first, but soon her breathing changed as she seemed to relax, her body showing signs of calmness. Will, who was in another room, heard soft sounds and recognized the tone of contentment. Curious, he quietly got out of bed and tiptoed down the hallway. He peeked through a slightly open door and saw Lena lying next to Lila, giving her a comforting embrace. Will slowly opened the door a bit more and noticed Lena gently holding Lila close. Lena kissed Lila on the neck, her actions slow and tender. Lila's breathing became deeper, showing how relaxed she felt in Lena's care. Will watched from the doorway, noticing how both women seemed completely comfortable with each other. He could sense the bond they shared, a moment of trust and closeness between them. Feeling somewhat out of place, Will watched silently from his spot. The peaceful atmosphere in the room made him realize how deep their connection was. Lila, still resting, appeared to fall into a peaceful sleep as Lena continued to gently soothe her with soft touches. Will quietly stepped back, feeling that this was a private moment meant for them. As Lila began to snore lightly, the room was filled with a calm, serene atmosphere, a sense of comfort shared between the two. He decided to leave them undisturbed, closing the door behind him gently. She lifted her head from where she had been resting near Lila, smiled at her sleeping face, and moved closer to lie down beside her. Will quietly left the room and went back to his own, determined to think through his problems. Woody, Will, Gary, and Danny were enjoying coffee on the deck outside the kitchen when Lena and Lila came in. Will made sure he could see them as they poured coffee, exchanged playful looks, and encouraged each other before stepping outside with shy smiles. "Well, look who decided to join us," Woody started. "Lena and Lila are up, and it's only 9:30. What did you two do last night that has you both so tired? We heard when you finally went to sleep because the house got quiet. Was it really that tiring before that?" Lena had a big smile, but Lila looked down at the floor and turned a bit red. Will took her arm and gently pulled her close. "Come sit on my lap and I'll keep you safe from Woody." She looked surprised, but let him pull her onto his lap, where she buried her head against his chest, trying not to look at anyone. This made everyone laugh even more. She stayed hidden, but a small smile appeared on her face. Lena patted her head and giggled. "All right, enough teasing. Sometimes girls just want to have fun," Will said, still smiling. "Let's leave the girls alone. Let's eat and get to work. There's a song I want to finish this morning." Breakfast was lively. Lila finally got off Will's lap when he started trying to feed her. By the end of the meal, they could see a new, more energetic Lila. This upbeat feeling carried into their work session, but as Will shared the song he wanted to complete, the mood became more serious. It began. "I'll never lie to you," said the liar. "I'll never cheat on you," claimed the cheater. "He doesn't care for you like I do," he promised honestly, knowing his feelings were not true love. The lyrics explored a tale of someone without morals, and they worked together to fine-tune the song until it was ready for final review. By 2 p.m. they had finished, and Will suggested looking at another song from his notebook. "Hey, this next one should be a bit brighter. We need something fun to dance to among the serious ones," Woody said, getting nods from the others. "Exactly. This one is for our lovely girls. I think they could really sell it. It's called I Want a. Baby, I want a new SUV with a big screen TV for me. And the kids. Baby, I want a bigger home with a garden and a gnome for me. And the kids. Baby, I want baby, I want baby, I want baby, I want baby. You need to get me what I want. Baby, I want a swimming pool to relax around during school for me. And the kids, and a hot tub and a gazebo for me. And the kids. Baby, I really want a pair of tall boots." After the girls got excited, added their own verses, and turned it into a lively Taylor Swift-style song, they bounced around on the stage having fun. It lasted about 4 minutes. They wanted to add more verses, but Woody told them that though it could go to 10 minutes during live shows, it needed to stay around 4 for the album. He suggested that 3 minutes would get them more airplay. At 6, Woody said it was time to stop. He asked everyone to take showers and dress nicely for looking at stars and playing guitar. He wanted them in the van in 1 hour. While they waited, the boys set up lawn chairs and cheered when the girls came out with their hair braided, wearing white shorts and sleeveless tops with sandals. "These girls look amazing!" Woody shouted, and Will started clapping. Lena smiled and walked confidently, while Lila tried the same but seemed a little shy. Still, she carried herself well. Before they left town, Woody asked Will, "What did your lawyer say? Are we good? If not, we can do this another way." Will assured him there were no problems, so they kept driving until they reached a small Mexican restaurant on the town's edge. After sharing some beers, nachos, enchiladas, tacos, and plenty of chips with salsa, they got back in the van and quietly passed through Cowtown, with its population of 4,446, on their way to Billy Goat Hill. They arranged the chairs in a semicircle facing the town and set out 3 guitars, a hand drum, a tambourine, and a mouth harp. Woody took charge and started to tell stories. "That's our hometown, me and Will. It may not look like much, and we aren't really welcome back there, but it's where we grew up. Over there, near the line of trees, is the river we learned to swim in. Just like George Strait learned to swim in the Frio, we learned to swim in the Nueces. See that spot where the dirt road meets the trees? The river flows through there, and that's where Will had his special moment. Lena, why don't you sing that song for us?" Sitting next to her, Will joined in as they sang about his story. "One restless summer we found love growing wild on the banks of the river on a well-trodden path. It's funny how those memories last, like strawberry wine and 17. The warm July moon saw everything. My first taste of love, so bittersweet green on the vine like strawberry wine." As soon as they finished, Woody began to share more about their childhood, when they could play games and ride bikes all day until it got dark, as long as they were home for meals. He talked about their younger days when all the fields were full of crops. They used to pick and carry watermelons, then gather other things like black-eyed peas, onions, and finally, corn. "At one time, we had fields full of gold around us," Woody said as he began to play music. Will joined in. "This is a song we used to sing right here. Our fields were made of corn, not barley, but our experiences were pretty much the same as Sting's." Woody started the song, and soon Lena and Lila added their voices, making it sound like a duet between Sting and Eva Cassidy. "You'll remember me when the west wind blows over the fields of barley. You'll forget the sun in the jealous sky as we walk in fields of gold. So she took her love to gaze for a while over the fields of barley. In his arms she fell as her hair came down among the fields of gold. Will you stay with me? Will you be my love? In the fields of barley we'll forget the sun in the jealous sky as we lie in fields of gold. I never made promises lightly, and there have been some I've broken. But I swear, in the days still left we'll walk in fields of gold. We'll walk in fields of gold. We need to add that to our show, if not the album," Gary said firmly. "Just beautiful. What's the story behind you in this song?" he asked Will. Will just nodded at Woody, who began to share. "It may be hard to believe since Will and I were good students and athletes. Well, Will was the star athlete and I was a team player. Anyway, even though we came from nice families and were liked, there was a family in town who didn't think we were good enough to date their daughters, along with someone from an even richer family who disliked us. Despite that, we dated those daughters and made promises. We believed our love could overcome any differences, and that one day we would walk in fields of gold. Will ended up running off to Mexico and marrying the oldest daughter right after high school, which surprised everyone. Her parents and the wealthy man were sure she would choose him and join their families. This was despite the fact they all knew he wasn't faithful during college, telling her from a distance how much he loved her and wanted to marry her. Will regained respect when he became a father to a beautiful and talented grandchild, and when he had a second just as wonderful, he became her parents' favorite. It was interesting that when she suddenly got an order to keep him away from her and the kids because of past behavior, they still supported Will. Honestly, it was quite shocking. No one in the county believed what had happened, except for the judge and the social worker, both related to the main person involved. Her family, who once thought Will was not good enough for her, stood by him. That was until they were told they would never see their grandchildren unless they started supporting their daughter. Her parents changed their minds and things became very tense for Will at work. He tried to stay calm, but sometimes you have to take a step back and think. So, about 6 weeks ago, Will and I talked about everything that had gone wrong, agreed that things were pretty bad for him, and he loaded up his pickup truck to head to Tennessee. You see, what's right doesn't always win. The truth doesn't always matter. And money, not love, often makes things happen. "What are you going to do, Will? Let them take your kids and ruin your name?" Lila asked, sounding angry. "Look," Will said defensively, "I have a plan, but..." Their conversation was interrupted by a loud truck pulling up the hill from the highway and parking next to the van. A large man with long brown hair and a beard jumped out and said, "Wow! Paco said he saw a circle of chairs and heard music when he passed by. Sierra, call and tell them to come over." He turned to the group. "Hi, everyone. I'm Tim, or Timbo as these guys call me. We'll introduce ourselves in a bit, but first, where have you all been? One moment we're having fun, and the next you're all gone. What happened?" "Things went south, Timbo. Wet Willie finally realized he would end up in trouble if he stayed, so Rob got his signed power of attorney and we took off to Tennessee." Paco arrived in his big truck, followed by a lot of people getting out of another vehicle. They all caught up for about 15 minutes, introducing themselves while starting to drink beer and whiskey at a faster pace. An hour passed quickly. It was hard to tell just how much whiskey Timbo had consumed, but he was finally feeling the effects. So were Lila, Lena, Woody, Danny, Gary, and most of the other people who had joined them, making a group of 22. "So, Tennessee, did you go back there to help him write some new songs for the pop music crowd?" "Forget you and your comment," Woody replied, slurring his words. "They pushed me into that stuff and I quit. Our lead songwriter over there tells me we're going to try something different, whatever that means, but it definitely won't be pop." "What does different sound like?" Paco asked. Instead of answering, Will started playing and singing a song he wrote called Screwed, Blued, and Tattooed. It tells the story of a wife who always wants more, no matter how much she already has. She pushes her husband to take a job that he and her father warn will keep him away more. Then, feeling lonely, she ends up with someone else and makes bad choices. When he finds her with that person, things turn messy. He gets into trouble and loses everything, including his family, and eventually leaves town. It was quiet for a few seconds after Will stopped singing. Then Paco said, "Well, that's enough to make anyone go crazy." They played for another hour, and the crowd back home had mixed reactions, sometimes crying and sometimes laughing. "Looks like the new songs are popular here," Woody said with a smile when they got back in the van. "We have a lot to do, but I think we're getting somewhere," Lena said before moving to the back seat of the van and falling asleep. It didn't take long for everyone else to doze off too, so Will drove in silence, thinking about Lila's challenge. Did he give up too soon? Forget about the property and everything else but his kids? Stay focused. Play the long game, he reminded himself. You can lose every little fight as long as you win in the end. They slept until 9, took some medicine to feel better, cooked beans, and worked on their music from 10 until 2. "The group from last night and some other friends will be arriving in an hour," Woody said. "They'll help cook and set things up, but we need to start the fires, prepare the salad, season the meats, and finish all the other tasks. So freshen up and get dressed." The group from last night grew to 32 friendly faces. Newcomers quickly became part of the gathering as the evening went on. Someone asked Woody to sing a favorite old song. He happily agreed while Will made sure everyone had a cold drink. After a couple of songs and plenty of applause, Woody strummed a bit and spoke normally. "While I've been singing to you, the person who writes these songs has been around, making sure you're all taken care of, just like always. Mr. Conscientious, why don't you come up here and join me? Let's show these people another side of you," Woody said with a smile. Will laughed, grabbed his guitar, sat down, and asked, "Shall we start with the drunk anthem?" Woody grinned and began to sing. Will joined in, singing, "I love you so much, it's unbelievable." Everyone cheered and laughed. Then Will called out, "Olsen twins, come up here and sing a tribute to my ex-wife." Lena and Lila stood and quickly moved into the circle, giggling and posing with hands on their hips. The band members grabbed their instruments, and the girls sang playfully, fluttering their eyelashes at the guys around them. Lena even playfully sat on Timbo's lap for a moment, causing laughter from everyone when they noticed Tim's surprised face. The boys kept playing as the girls created funny new verses about various things, like fancy clothes and nice gifts. It was hilarious. Woody wrapped it up by saying, "You can't have everything you want." Lena responded with a playful flop in his lap and said, "Please don't let me down." Will's ex-wife's former best friend then added, "She will be shocked when she hears that song. Her family and friends will know it's about her right away. When can we get a copy? I want to play it during the country fair parade. We can dress up and join in just like Lena and Lila. It will be amazing." Back in Austin, the fun turned into hard work. They practiced their songs for 6 hours every day, but they also exercised, lifted weights, ran, swam at the local springs, and kayaked on the lake. They took turns cooking breakfast, grabbed lunch from taco trucks if they weren't busy, and either cooked dinner or went out to one of Austin's great restaurants. The nice breeze from Lake Austin made places like Hula Hut and Abel's favorites, but they enjoyed the history of spots like Threadgills, El Rancho, and others. They also loved burgers from Dirty Martin's and ice cream from Sandy's, which were close to their homes. They dove into the Austin culture and met their future manager at the famous Broken Spoke. Barry Donaldson, at 26, was a big fan of Woody's first album. Managing 3 successful local bands already, he impressed them by saying the record company was mistaken for not recognizing Woody's talent in the second album. After they played some new songs for him, he eagerly asked if he could be their manager. "Wow, this could be an amazing album. I don't know where you found these songwriters and musicians, but I've never been part of a group with such a bright future. Please let me join. My team and I are skilled at using technology, social media, and online platforms to help our clients. We're also good at working with radio, TV, and live music venues to promote them. So far, only one has gone national, but I know you all will too, and that will be a new challenge for us." After he promised to guide them without getting too involved, they signed the contract, and the Billy Goat Hill pundits finally had a manager, someone who enjoyed their music. He took care of the business side that had been tough for Woody, allowing them to concentrate on creating music. Occasionally, Woody, Gary, and Danny would have guests over at their apartments, but Will didn't, and the women they entertained were not pursuing relationships with men. Will could hear soft sounds coming from the other room at times, but it seemed more about releasing stress than building a romantic connection. After a long week, and with their first album almost ready to record, they decided to go out to have some fun and celebrate. They started at the unique clubs in the 4th Street area, then crossed over to the lively East 6th Street, which is quite popular. They were taking rides home so everyone felt free to enjoy themselves, and before midnight, Will had a bit too much to drink. After making a bunch of new friends and dancing closely with several college girls, they thought it was time to head back before anyone got upset. On their way home, Will joked around with Lena and Lila, but they laughed and reminded him that the last time he made wild promises, he ended up sick and needing help. They didn't realize he was feeling good but not drunk at all. He was just curious if they would be interested in more fun. It didn't seem like they were, but he was sitting between them, and there were no complaints when he made light touches. As they reached their apartment, Lena looked uneasy and Lila seemed lost in thought. He playfully asked for a kiss from each of them before they could go inside, and he could feel warmth from both as he drew them closer. Even though they seemed open to his attention, he sent them to their bedroom while he cleaned up and lay down in his own space. He listened to their laughter through the thin wall for a bit before hearing the first sound of excitement. He guessed it must be Lila, but since she had been a little bold lately. Will waited a few more minutes, then quietly moved through the living room to their door, which was slightly open. He quietly entered the dark room, noticing the soft movements in front of him. Lila and Lena were together, sharing a moment of intimacy. Lila enjoyed being close to Lena, who had promised to take care of her. Despite her thoughts briefly wandering to Will, Lila stayed in the moment with Lena, appreciating the tenderness they shared. Lena held Lila close, her arms wrapped around her friend in a comforting embrace. They were lost in their own world when Will approached, his presence unnoticed at first. Lila shifted slightly, responding to the warmth and care she was receiving from Lena. She felt secure in this connection, savoring the trust between them. Will, observing quietly from a distance, saw the bond between the two women. His thoughts stirred, but he stayed respectful of the scene in front of him. The atmosphere in the room was peaceful, and Lila's contentment was clear as she rested in Lena's care. Lena, too, was focused on comforting Lila, making her feel safe and cared for. As time passed, Lila's thoughts returned to Will briefly, but she remained with Lena, who gently guided her through this quiet moment of closeness. Will watched for a while longer before deciding to step back, leaving the two women in their shared tranquility. The room remained filled with a calm and peaceful energy, and Lila drifted into a restful state, comforted by the quiet understanding between her and Lena. Will quietly left, understanding that this moment was theirs to share. He shifted his focus, trying to control his thoughts, and gently held her, feeling the warmth of their connection. The moment was filled with intensity as both Lila and Will were wrapped up in the experience. Lila's mind was overwhelmed by what was happening, and she couldn't focus on anything else. She felt herself trembling as her body reached a peak she had never felt before. The sensation was powerful, taking over completely, and she lost control for a moment, her body reacting in ways that surprised even her. Will, equally caught in the moment, reached the height of his emotions, and everything seemed to happen at once. Lila, exhausted, collapsed forward, bringing Will with her, and they both lay there trying to catch their breath. Meanwhile, Lena, who had been caught between them, wiggled free and sat up, a bit flustered but still playful. She made a joking comment about being stuck under them, which lightened the mood for a moment, even drawing a small laugh from Will. Lila, however, was already fast asleep, worn out from everything that had just happened. Lena, still catching her breath, joked about the situation, but quickly shifted back to her playful nature. Will, sensing the lightheartedness, responded in kind, keeping the atmosphere comfortable. They shared a few more words before deciding to let things settle down for the night. After that, things changed. Lila became closer to Will, moving into his room, and their bond deepened. Though their relationship grew, they found moments of comfort beyond the excitement, with Lila often seeking warmth and care from Will, especially during quieter times when she simply wanted to be close and feel safe. He suggested other options, but she wasn't ready for that. Still, she had come to enjoy some moments with her partner and felt more excited as the time drew closer. Lena brought a few items to share and surprised Lila with her enthusiasm. It wasn't just Lena's excitement that surprised her. It was that it could be clearly heard in Will's bedroom. Now Lila realized Will could hear everything that happened on those nights when Lena was close to her. Lila kept telling Will that she wasn't really into women. It was just the fact that the most attractive man and woman she knew lived with her, and she found it hard to resist Lena's charm. Being around Will turned her feelings upside down. Will reassured her that it was no big deal, and he joked about looking forward to the day when she would switch places with Lena. This made Lila playfully hit him and insist that it would never happen. He laughed and agreed that it might, so she protested and playfully struck him again, though her laughter told a different story. Spending nights in Will's bed changed Lila in unexpected ways. The shyness she had shown since they met faded, and she began dressing in a way that highlighted her personality. A lively and funny side of her came out. She was no longer just in the background, but stood out with her beautiful smile, bright voice, and joyful movements while performing. Freed from her inhibitions, they discovered her singing talent was much more impressive than she had shown before, and she was comfortable dancing in a fun way. Lila's new confidence inspired Lena to be more outgoing as well, and she created fun little dances during their practices. After an energetic rehearsal where the girls competed to impress each other, Woody called for a meeting at 6 that evening on his patio. "I'm bringing tacos from the truck for everyone. Bring your own drinks. We need to discuss some important things about our future." No one knew what to expect when Woody appeared before them, looking determined. Even Will was a bit confused. He started by saying, "Yes, I know we're almost done with the album, but we need to start over. We've missed something important, and that changes everything. I'm the so-called star of this group, and this is meant to be my third album, but I suggest we make this the first album for a new supergroup called the Billy Goat Hill Pundits. No, please hear me out. I'll still be in front, and I'll sing lead on some songs, but Will's deep voice and serious style work better for others than I can. He really captures that dark and intense vibe. But the best part is, we have an amazing version of the twins with us now. I don't know what Will's secret is, but Lila, wow, how did you keep all that talent hidden? It turns out you're even more beautiful and talented than Martina McBride, and that's really special. Lena has always been lively and open on stage, but with you shining, she sings like you two belong in a group together and dances around like part of a famous show." Lila looked surprised and a bit scared. Lena seemed excited. "Lila, you're going to sing the song you wrote about your mom's boyfriend. Lena, you'll sing your song about those teenage moments, and Danny will choose who sings his song about falling. So, I'm switching from lead singer to music producer for this group. We're going to look at some songs on our album and change them a bit to fit the incredible skills of these rising stars and the more serious, moody one over there. He may not have as much talent, but he can be quite interesting in a classic way. Any questions? Lila had many, and Lena had a few. The seasoned musicians just smiled, knowing he was right. Will grumbled. I wish she had shown her talent earlier. I want to get this on the radio as soon as possible. Lena reminded him that she had asked him to help her weeks ago, but he didn't. Lila smiled at him playfully, winked, and silently joked. They worked late into the night rewriting and rearranging, then spent long hours in the studio from morning until night over the next few days, continuing through the next month. Summer ended, and autumn began in Austin, Texas. The biggest change was the weather cooling down from extreme heat to temperatures in the 90s, along with many excited Longhorn football fans coming to town on weekends. Barry talked to the manager at Maggie Mae's and quickly replaced the house band with the Pundits on Thursday night. It didn't seem like a big deal at first, but word spread quickly thanks to Barry mentioning his new group on the radio and social media. Everyone in Austin loves being part of something new and exciting. The place wasn't quite full when they began playing. Woody introduced each member and told the audience that if anyone was a fan of his earlier album, they might want to leave now because this would be different. No one left, but a few cheered. The rest didn't really know who he was. We're the Billy Goat Hill Pundits, and these songs are from our new album, The Human Condition. Everyone here helped in some way to write or arrange each song, but I want to give special thanks to Will for his key role in this album. He created most of the songs and had the ideas that inspired us to make an album about what it means to be human. Just like life, some of the songs are cheerful and light, some are serious and dark, and some express anger. Stay with us, and we will let you share your thoughts on our songs after you hear them, he said. Will teamed up with Woody on the first song, called Plutocracy, which was later renamed Boss Rule. This song told the story of a small town where a few wealthy families controlled everything: the banks, the best jobs, the local government, and even law enforcement. It had a folk sound and included a couple of lively banjo duels between Lena and Gary, reminiscent of old movies. The audience was quiet, paying close attention. This was not music for dancing or singing along. It was a heavy story told through song. When it ended, there was a brief silence before the audience erupted into applause and cheers. People flocked in from the street, drawn by the noise, and soon the bar was packed. Lila's song, Holier Than Thou, also known as Nueces Valley Hypocrites, brought laughter, clapping, and sing-alongs. Instead of a school group judging a mother for her choice of clothing, it focused on members of a church who criticized young people, the poor, and Latinos while ignoring cheating and dishonesty within their own ranks. Their hypocrisy was stronger than what was seen in the story of Harper Valley. Cheating Sluts featured the stories of Will, a husband who was cheated on, and Lena, a wife in the same situation, as they shared missed signs of infidelity from their partners. Lena encouraged anyone who had experienced betrayal to join them in singing the powerful chorus, leading to tears in the audience. Lila, with the help of Lena, sang Mommy's Boyfriend in sweet, childlike voices, taking the audience a moment to realize that the song spoke of a serious issue. There were gasps, wide eyes, and more tears. Leo had a lively tune similar to The Lion Sleeps Tonight, and it took a while for the audience to understand that it addressed dishonest police officers and their powerful connections. A quiet and unsure reaction to the first song turned lively after people had time to think about the performances. Lena and Lila's singing of Daddy, We Miss You got the loudest applause of the night, but Lila changed the mood with Peytos and Hebios, sharing a tough story from her childhood. Will took the microphone to sing Hank Williams' classic, Your Cheating Heart, with the twins happily singing backup. Lena and Woody delivered a spirited version of Ring of Fire by June Carter and Johnny Cash, which had everyone joining in and dancing at their tables. The girls took that excitement even further with a lively, playful performance of I Wanta. Woody and the girls shifted the mood again with falling downstairs and running into doors, sharing a story about a family trying to cope with the challenges of a difficult home life. The audience showed their concern with sad faces and quiet murmurs. Will sang The Scales of Justice next, followed by Happy Now. that you got what you wanted. The first song criticized unfair judges and social workers, while the second revealed the selfishness of a certain individual. Both songs left the audience looking troubled. Next came I Got Everything, Including the Kitchen Sink, by Lila and Lena, a lively song about a wife's experiences in a confusing situation, which drew both laughter and disapproval. Woody performed Will's latest satirical piece, God Asks My Permission, about a very rich and powerful person who dismisses those who question him. All four singers then joined for The Meaning of No, telling a story about a charming man who pursues a woman despite her repeated refusal. Will closed the showcase with I'll Never Lie to You, where the same charming man made empty promises to a hopeful woman. Woody thanked the audience for listening and asked for their thoughts. Most feedback was positive, though some felt the order of the songs created a difficult emotional experience. He promised to think about that and thanked them again. The audience wanted more, and they had more to give, but were unsure how long they could stay on stage. The manager informed them they were welcome to play all night, but needed a break to sell some drinks. They mingled, chatted, enjoyed a couple of drinks, and then returned to the stage for a few new songs that were well received. 6 of Woody's best songs from his first album kicked off the set, followed by a mix of covers, ranging from Appalachian folk to bluegrass, southern rock, country, and western. The variety got people singing and dancing, and many commented on the band's versatility. From the start, a photographer and videographer were capturing the show, along with a woman eager to interview them afterward. She didn't give much of an introduction, but mentioned she was good friends with Barry, their excited new manager. She seemed to understand why he believed in them so much. Sensing it was a safe space, the band opened up about their journey but stuck to the official story about the song's inspiration. They claimed the songs came from stories they had researched rather than personal experiences. The interviewer seemed to know better but didn't push for more, at least not that night. Later, the entertainment report she sold to the local ABC affiliate hinted that the emotions behind the songs might be more personal than they let on. The next morning, the band returned to the studio to fine-tune their work. 2 days later, they began recording tracks. Although the album had been in development for months, the actual recording process only took a few days. They wanted it to feel raw but flawless, and the experienced producer Barry hired was more than happy with the results. The critics were too. Meanwhile, new fans, moved by their performance at Maggie Mae's, posted clips on YouTube. A few days later, a part of the entertainment report that aired on KVUE in Austin was picked up by the entertainment segment of Good Morning America, GMA, which was featuring non-traditional music groups like theirs, calling it concept music. The YouTube videos received a lot of feedback, mostly positive, with people praising the music and lyrics. However, some critics complained the music made them feel depressed or angry. Will smiled at that. They had intended for the music to provoke thought. The GMA feature sparked even more discussion, especially because it highlighted the band's songs addressing heavy topics like child abuse, corruption in the judicial system, and Woody's critique of wealthy men with too much power. The segment ended with their song, Leo, which touched on the growing distrust of law enforcement in marginalized communities. In the end, the buzz surrounding the GMA segment and YouTube clips created the perfect lead-up to the release of their album, The Human Condition. Singles from the album started playing on the radio and online just a week later. Even in their hometown, people were tuning in, whether it was from watching GMA or the younger generation sharing clips on YouTube. More kids were on Instagram, while more adults used Facebook. Parts of their performances, filmed by a videographer, were shared with the band's followers and friends. In the following weeks, Woody received many texts and calls from their hometown. No one had Will's new number, but they were familiar with the characters in his songs. They shared their feelings with Woody and expressed their opinions about those mentioned in the songs. This upset the more prominent members of the community, who were used to admiration or at least quiet respect. Their first show after the release of their first singles was at Maggie Mae's. People had to arrive 2 hours early to get a seat. They played for 2 hours to a lively crowd, taking only 2 short breaks, while many social media posts came in during and after the performance. When they woke up the next day, they found out they were trending, and their social media accounts were filled with new friend requests. It would have surprised them that they responded to many of these requests and shared new pictures and videos of themselves, both alone and with others, if they had known. Their followers and friends grew rapidly as they focused on preparing songs for their second album and practicing for shows at different venues. Barry's tech team did great work. Now it was time to perform around town to improve their show, while Barry organized their first tour. They needed new equipment for some bigger venues, but they needed money for that, so they were ready to take on any opportunities that would help them earn and refine their performance for the upcoming tour. The next show they got was at the historic Scoot Inn on E4th, an outdoor venue that was larger than Maggie Mae's but still cozy. They set up early, and a security guard made sure the stage remained clear until they were ready. It was Friday, and the Horns had a home game the next night, so the town was buzzing with excitement, and the Scoot Inn was packed with people. It was the first cool night of fall, with a gentle breeze, but the DJ had done a great job of energizing the crowd. The two bars kept everyone happy with drinks by the time the band came on stage at 8:30. The stage was cozy and about 2 feet high, with fans packed in closely. Woody introduced the band members and shared how the band started. It all began during a gathering under the full moon when Will realized his marriage was ending, and he felt lost in their hometown. The crowd cheered and laughed at the story of Lena being playfully taken by a tipsy Will. They applauded when Woody talked about Lila's transformation, her singing talent, and how well she worked with Lena, Will, and himself, no matter the song. Danny and Gary would have solos in the show, but Woody let them lead a warm-up jam session. This lasted over 5 minutes and featured blues, jazz, classical, and bluegrass music. The girls and Gary traded instruments based on the music, which the audience loved. After that, Woody returned to the microphone and told the audience, "The songs in the first part of our show are from our new album, The Human Condition. Will wanted to name it The Dregs of Mankind, which might fit, but our manager says it could turn people away. Before we start, I should warn you that the first part of our show might get a bit heavy. Please listen closely to the lyrics. They may resonate with some of you deeply. Don't worry, the songs in the second and third sets are much lighter, and you'll hear some original pieces from our band members. They wrote every song on this album except for the 2 familiar classics. Some of these songs might be on our next album, or even more than one. Remember, the first set tells stories about real people. Feel free to express your anger towards the issues raised, but please don't take it out on us." Wood and Will kicked things off with The Plutocracy. They were joined by the twins for Leo, and then Will sang The Scales of Justice. The crowd in Austin was excited after the first song and upset after the third. The song Holier Than Thou by the girls lifted their spirits, but the songs Cheating Sluts and Daddy We Miss You brought them back down. Your Cheating Heart and Ring of Fire gave everyone a chance to relax and sing along, and they did. The cleverness of I'll Never Lie to You caught everyone's attention, just as the heartfelt performance of the loving wife in The Meaning of No did. The mood brightened again with I Wanta and I Got Everything, until Lila and Lena warned everyone about Mommy's boyfriend, Habeos and Pedos, and falling downstairs and running into doors. When Will finished singing Happy Now, the audience was ready for a break and some drinks. Lively conversations filled the room as fans talked among themselves and with the band members when they came off stage. Most talks with the band were about congratulations, but many fans shared that they understood the feelings behind the songs. The second set was different, showcasing new stories and songs for the next album, focusing more on love and less on sadness. The music was faster and included different instruments, arranged by Gary and Lena. The third set featured many covers, from artists like George Strait and Garth Brooks to Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, Lynyrd Skynyrd, the Allman Brothers, AC/DC, and the Rolling Stones. The whole crowd danced, cheered, and enjoyed the show, asking for encore after encore before the band could finish. Lena and Will performed Strawberry Wine for the first encore. Woody, Lena, and Lila sang Fields of Gold for the second, and the 4 of them sang When the Sun's Going Down Over Choke Canyon Lake to each other. The crowd loved it so much they wanted more. But that was the final song, even though they lingered to chat. The next day, they found out thousands of videos had been shared on social media. The posts covered all 3 sets, but the songs from their album got the most attention. The BGH pundits were becoming popular online without fully understanding what that meant. Barry told them they needed to spend an hour the next night interacting with fans live on their website. They responded with confusion, asking, "What website?" They wrapped up early that day to tidy up and change into nicer clothes than what they had worn during practice. Nobody was keen on it at first due to the awkward questions they often faced in interviews, but their fans turned out to be thoughtful and passionate about the music, making it an enjoyable experience. Will, Lila, and Lena couldn't openly say their own experiences inspired the lyrics, but they didn't deny it either. It was a balancing act, but Will took the lead, and the girls followed. Woody had said that none of the problems were his, and that was good enough. Gary and Danny were more interested in the music than the words, so they had a great time. They played for over 90 minutes before they left to grab some dinner, and social media praised their performance. Barry booked them a Saturday concert and dance at Mavericks in Buda after another band canceled 2 weeks before the show. Mavericks was big, loud, and crowded with enthusiastic people. The pundits wondered how their new songs would be received, but it turned out that people from all backgrounds shared common struggles and feelings, just like students and others in Austin. In fact, the crowd seemed particularly upset about issues caused by those in power, like government corruption and people who take advantage of others. They also showed strong support for stopping child abuse, as seen by the generous donations to the Safe Alliance and the Family Crisis Center. Lena suggested setting up donation tables for these charities, so after the first set, she took charge of directing attention to each charity and explaining their goals. After the show, the representatives of the charities gave her warm hugs to thank her. As soon as the set ended, the bartender sent a tray of drinks to the stage, and the band members spread out to chat with fans and friends. Will barely made it into the crowd before someone grabbed him from behind and lifted him off the ground. "Guess who?" a deep voice called out, and Will shouted, "Let me down, Timbo!" He was set down, only to be greeted by a cheerful person named Sierra. They talked and learned that others from home were there as well. They agreed to meet up after the last set if everyone was still awake. "You always made me want to celebrate with a drink, and tonight it's because that story is just so sad," Sierra said over the noise. "I want to confront your ex and the person she's with to protect your kids." "Those songs aren't just about my kids," Will explained. "Lena and Lila wrote some based on their experiences, and Danny co-wrote one with me. I believe there are serious concerns about my children, mostly involving neglect and a lack of care, and my daughter seems to be getting more withdrawn and unwell, which really needs to be addressed. I can't do anything with the court orders in place, but I am close to hiring someone. Give us a week and we will do our best to find out," Sierra promised. "If we can't hire someone, they cannot get away with hurting those children, especially after everything else they have done." The second set of songs was very well received. They had finished some and improved others, and the upbeat music made people laugh, dance, and sing along. There were a few more songs with deeper meanings, but the ones that got the biggest reactions were High Flyers, about neglectful parents, and Screwed, Blued, and Tattooed, which Woody said was Will's story. The lively third set included Strawberry Wine, Fields of Gold, When the Sun Goes Down Over Choke Canyon Lake, and for the first time they ended with I Love You So Much I Could Burst. The reunion with their friends was delayed by the encores, but finally happened an hour after the show at a bed and breakfast near Driftwood. After a few drinks, Woody sent a message to Barry asking them to perform at the country fair and hog cookin' in their hometown the second weekend of April. Just after 3 a.m., Barry spoke on the phone with Sierra, who was in charge of the big dance, and they agreed on a fair trade for the band's performance, no fees, just plenty of drinks and barbecue. After dealing with their headaches and stretching out after sleeping on couches and rugs, they arrived at their reservation at Salt Lick around 2:30 p.m. They enjoyed a big meal, shared hugs and goodbyes like old friends do, promising to stay in touch. Then the band got back to work. They were getting a lot of radio play and feedback about their first album, which made them worry that the songs would lose their impact. Woody decided to release their second album just before Christmas, so they really focused on their work and practice. At the same time, Barry wanted them to perform more, so their lives turned into a busy routine of practice, improvement, and traveling for shows across Texas. They were well received in Fort Worth, but not as much in Dallas. The shows around Houston were packed, and tickets for 2 shows near San Antonio sold out quickly. It was fun, exciting, and a bit stressful. Lila and Will worked through their stress together, Lena played with her toys, and the 3 other men spent time with whoever they pleased. None of them understood why Lena did not pick from the many who liked her, but she seemed happy, so they left it alone. Meanwhile, money was coming in, and after Sierra and friends had no luck with their inquiries about his children, Will spent some of his earnings on top-notch investigators who could work quietly. They began their work while Will focused on writing, practicing, performing, and doing interviews. After the interviews, everyone in Texas and many people across the country knew the names and stories of Woody and Will. Their fame lasted much longer than expected. Most news articles were just repeating what was already known, but a few looked deeper into the community and politics of Cowtown. They drew conclusions that Woody and Will didn't confirm or deny. Because these were brief segments, they could avoid clear answers by sharing some details about their upcoming album. The big surprise came when they were invited to a podcast hosted by someone with over 1 million subscribers. Woody and Will had never heard of Cheaters: The Rest of the Story, nor had they seen any episodes, but Barry's assistant arranged for them to meet for 30 minutes at their practice space. They met the young, lively female host and sat where she told them to, in front of one of 3 cameras. Within minutes, it was clear to them and to the band members who were watching that this was not going to be an easy interview where they could share simple thoughts or gentle hints about their new music. The host had some documents, Will's divorce papers and other legal notices. She asked tough questions. Did he cheat? Did he mistreat his family? Why was he arrested? Why would a social worker say there was proof of trouble at home if he had not done anything wrong? At first, Will thought about dodging the questions, but it was clear she had strong information, so he decided to respond honestly. No, I did not cheat. No one can show proof that I ever did because I did not. The claims that I hurt my wife or children in any way are absurd. You won't find anyone who can say they saw me hurt them or heard from a trusted source that I did. There are no records from doctors or hospitals because it never happened. As for why the judge ruled the way he did in favor of my wife and her new partner, you should ask the judge, who just happens to be her partner's uncle. The social worker is also related to Sarah. While I cannot say for sure that this impacted her report, it does raise questions about their connections. The host smiled and replied, I asked those questions. I spoke with 47 local people about your character and whether they believed you mistreated your family. 22 refused to answer unless they were promised their names would stay secret. When I assured them of their anonymity, they agreed, along with the 25 who spoke openly. I won't share all 47 answers, but the summary is clear. Not only no, but definitely no. Many people said you were the main caregiver and favorite parent of the kids, and they believed her parents felt the same way. Interestingly, none of the 47 people had anything nice to say about your ex-wife Sarah or her partner Donnie. Most had a good opinion of your former father-in-law, but thought he treated you poorly because his daughter threatened to keep her children away from him if he didn't. They also spoke negatively about the judge, the sheriff, and the social worker. I tried to talk to the sheriff, the judge, and the social worker, but none agreed to an interview or provided a written statement. So, Mr. William Andrew Callahan, it seems to me that many songs on the BGH Pundit's first album are about your life. Am I right? Will, still filled with anger, was about to shout, Yes, they are! But Woody stopped him. Miss Daniels, I think we'll let your research speak for us, and you and your audience can make up their own minds. She smirked but shot him a glare when he wouldn't let Will respond to her next questions about the album's songs related to child neglect. Woody smiled back and reminded her that not all songs were written by Will, and that every band member contributed to exploring the human condition on the album. When she asked about a song from their next album about children raised by parents who don't prioritize them, he shrugged and said they would leave that conclusion to her and her viewers. Next, she examined the lyrics of The Scales of Justice and Leo, and shared what she learned in interviews about the judge and sheriff from the people in Cowtown. It was not flattering, and matched the lyrics perfectly. Will felt a mix of excitement and fear, knowing that their attempts to defend themselves would not be enough from now on, assuming anyone actually watched the podcast. They did. In fact, her subscriptions nearly doubled in the week after the interview aired, and the powerful people in Cowtown felt the pressure increasing. The final chapter will be released a week after this is posted. I should know better than to make promises like that. I won't explain everything, but since I wrote that, I have experienced the loss of my dog, a brother-in-law, a sibling to cancer, and I received some troubling news about my own health. Since then, I've been going from one doctor to another, and when I'm not at medical appointments, I'm in labs or radiology getting more tests done. Looks like January and February will be a new adventure. Sorry, you may need to go back and read the earlier parts since it's been a while, but I promise I didn't plan for this delay. If you enjoy, it ain't paranoia. I hope to edit the next chapter this week, if all goes well. Not only did Cheaters the Rest of the Story gain followers, but Carla Daniels also attracted attention from higher-ups. She even sold parts of her podcast and research to a big news outlet that used its resources to dig deeper. What started as a complaint by a wronged man turned into a full investigation into corruption in a small Texas town. Will realized things had become serious when he received lawsuits for slander and notices to stop making certain claims. He just laughed and called Barry, who then contacted the lawyer he had on standby. The lawyer asked Will to come to his office in one of the tall buildings that blocked the view of the Capitol as soon as he could. He and Woody made an appointment, dressed in their best but still mismatched clothes, and took a ride share downtown. Their young lawyer, James Savage, seemed confident, almost overly so. However, his assurance that he would handle the claims well was encouraging. He made it clear that they needed to be completely honest in their interviews to avoid any surprises later on. He also told them not to answer any media questions about the lawsuits. They agreed and learned what it takes to prove slander under Texas law. The three key points they needed to prove were that the defendant made a false statement to someone else, that it harmed the person's reputation or well-being, and that the defendant acted carelessly or on purpose. I'm quite familiar with your songs, Mr. Callahan. Having seen you perform at Maggie Mae's, The Scoot Inn, and Mavericks, I'm a fan. I also watched both Miss Daniels' podcast and the news follow-up. Their legal advisor either doesn't know the facts surrounding your divorce or has been misled. If they can prove the songs are about them and that you made untrue claims to the public that hurt their reputation, they could win. But they have issues to deal with, starting with gathering information. I assume you want me to talk to anyone who can help with this case. If so, I need their names and contact details. Once you compile the list, I'll meet with you to go over what they might know. Assuming the songs you wrote are about your life and that Miss Daniels' research is solid, and I believe we will do well in the first phase. By the time we reach trial, we will have what TMZ discovered and what we gathered in the early investigations. This means we likely won't need to dive too deeply into the details. Sure, we'll bring in a few investigators, but no need for that, Mr. Savage. I hired investigators almost 3 weeks ago. My friends helped them blend in with the community, and they have been collecting information since then. Their first report will arrive next week. You are not only a great songwriter, Mr. Callahan, but an exceptional client. I take it you saw this lawsuit coming? Yes. But more importantly, I want to show that the court was not fair, that the social worker lied, and that the sheriff is as untrustworthy as the judge and the other members of the Smitherman family. Most importantly, I want proof that they are not taking care of my children because I want full custody when the truth comes out. Got it. In that case, I'll get our family law expert here quickly so we can create a strong plan to meet those objectives. He made a call, and shortly after, a young Latina came in. Will, let me introduce Drusilla Rodriguez-Drew from our family law team. Based on my chat with your manager, I shared a brief overview of your situation. She's a fan of your music and understands your hometown, so I think she will be a great fit for you. Woody, come with me to get a cup of coffee while they talk. Sometimes you just connect with people. By the time they found common friends, Drew and Will had formed a bond over their shared experiences. When they returned an hour later, they were close friends, and Drew had a cause to support. Drew and James stepped into a room next door for a quick meeting before James spoke with Will. If I may, here are the priorities we see. First, we want to lift the restraining order keeping you away from your children. Second, we want to ensure your right to visit them. And third, we will respond quickly to the defamation suit since it could affect your music. Those are surely top priorities, but there's more. Can we also sue to restore my parents' rights to see their grandchildren? They haven't seen them since this all started. I'm sure Mrs. Rodriguez will put this at the top of her list, James replied. To keep you engaged, Mr. Savage, would you like to counter-sue for the harm done to my reputation because of their lies, especially the ones that suggest I hurt my children and spouse? Also, feel free to add anything else you think we can use against them. I now have enough money to do what I should have done right away, but couldn't afford. Savage had been calm until now, but his big smile and response made Will and Woody believe he was the great white shark Barry mentioned. You're making me very happy. You might already be my favorite client, and we've only just started. We can work on the cases together, which will make things more interesting. We can also include attorney fees for Drew since their lies led to you losing your parental rights. In a serious tone, Drusilla warned, You were lucky that she filed for divorce when she did, and that the judge decided so quickly. If what I see in this folder is right, your finances have changed a lot. Given the clear greed in the original request, I'm sure they will want to rethink how they divide the assets and support for your ex-wife, or at least for your children. Will stood his ground. 2 things. First, I had no idea that our music would find fans, let alone make us millions from sponsorships, merchandise, and big concert sales. Second, I will do anything for my kids, but their mother and her partner should not get a single thing. Don't worry, Will. These people may seem important in their small circle, but we have dealt with the bigger players in Westlake and Lakeway. We will protect you, but they have no idea what's coming. Feeling more hopeful thanks to Drusilla's confidence, Will spent a good amount buying Andrew and Saralyn presents for the birthdays he missed because of the restraining order, as well as Christmas gifts his contacts said his kids wanted. The studio was reserved for 2 weeks from now for their second album when Will shared an idea that surprised everyone. Guys, our first album brought us a lot of attention, and I really believe we need to include songs about life in every album we create. With that, I want to explore some of Lena's blues songs and Lila's folk and bluegrass music. We don't need to do any covers, and we should space out the protest songs I wrote. I think our second and third albums can be just as genuine as the first, but with more variety. We have too many talented musicians not to try different styles, and I truly believe the songwriters can create lyrics for any arrangement we come up with. I listened to Lila's audition tapes again the other night when she went to bed early, and there are some real gems in there. That motivated me to listen carefully to what Lena gave us, and wow. These girls are amazing, not just as singers and musicians, but as writers, too. I had a lot to say in our first album, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you all letting me take some shots at my enemies. I'm not finished yet. I still have a lot to express, but so do our ladies. I know Gary and Danny have things they want to share musically as well. Lena, Lila, and I are ready to help you bring those ideas to life if you're willing to push us to become an even better band. And Woody, my friend, I think it's time we start working on a couple of songs about the craziness of trying to fit a country soul into a commercial pop mold. And maybe another about how true friendship can save lost souls. Barry was shocked when he saw the slightly revised song list for the BGH Pundits Unfettered. But after listening to their final practice tapes, both he and the producer were excited to get things moving in the studio. As always, their dedication to practicing perfectly meant they only spent a few days in the studio. Gary, Lila, and Lena added their touches, layering in different instruments. The finished album showcased both their musical talent and their strong lyrics. Watching their Grammy-winning producer's enthusiasm as he listened to the final cut was rewarding for everyone. They paid close attention to his advice on creating videos for some of their more heartfelt songs. Barry's media-savvy kids also had plenty of ideas, so in the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving, they were just as busy filming videos as they had been producing the music. Meanwhile, Savage and Rodriguez were stirring things up for the people the songs from the first album had been about. After filing petitions to end the restraining order and requesting custody, Drew also filed a motion asking the judge to step down from the case, pointing out his personal ties to the people involved. She also contacted the Texas State Board of Social Worker Examiners and the Department of Human Services, asking them to assign a neutral social worker to the case, someone who wasn't connected to the mother of the children. She demanded that the children be interviewed separately from the parents. At the same time, Savage filed lawsuits against Sarah and Donnie for slander and libel against William Andrew Callahan, and against the sheriff and social worker for tampering with evidence and giving false testimony. He also filed a motion to remove the judge due to his close ties to the defendants. Will had finally shared his phone number with Timbo and Sierra, and they frequently called to keep him updated on the fallout from the lawsuits and the chaos that followed. Until now, no one had ever dared to question the wealthy group that ran their small town, but suddenly those rich folks found themselves facing a lot of anger. From what people saw and talked about, they said Donnie and his dad seemed very annoyed, while Sarah and her parents looked confused and worried. Others were troubled by what was happening. News of these feelings made Will and Woody very happy. Many glasses were raised in cheers to their hometown heroes in Cowtown bars. Their music played all the time on jukeboxes and in cars with the windows down. The long-held frustration against those who treated the townspeople poorly came rushing out, making life uncomfortable for the Smithermans, their family, their friends, and their followers. The band celebrated Thanksgiving at a ranch near Tilden, bringing only 3 fried turkeys and cold beer for afternoon games. Guests from Cowtown brought more turkeys, lots of side dishes, and plenty of desserts, arriving at 10 o'clock in the morning with their kids. By noon, the turkeys were ready, the sides had been heated, and the food was displayed on the counter and stove. The little kids went first, followed by the bigger kids and the adults. Woody offered to let Lena and Lila go with the younger kids, but they chose to stay behind. Before everyone took their seats in the dining room or outside on the deck, Paco stood up to speak. "As you know, I come from a poor family. Many of us do, so you understand our tradition. We didn't have much, but we were grateful for what we had. I ask that everyone say one thing they are thankful for this Thanksgiving Day, and we will all say amen afterward. Let's begin with the kids and go around the room. Julio, Mijo, you've done this before, so you can go first." The answers varied from person to person, with some being thoughtful, but Will's answer was simple. "I am thankful for all the people in my life who care about me." All afternoon, there were cornhole and horseshoe tournaments in the yard, with divisions for kids, beginners, and open play. The TV was on for the Cowboys' Turkey Day game, but most people paid it little attention. Many expressed their disappointment that the Longhorns Aggies game had been replaced, especially since Texas AANDM moved to the SEC and struggled to find success. Later in the evening, the meal included turkey sandwiches on homemade bread, followed by an unplugged concert. The band played all the songs from their album Unfettered, and some new ones they were preparing for their next album, set to come out in early spring. They paid attention to their friends' reactions, knowing they had a good sense of what might be popular. They also played favorite requests, including all the songs from Human Condition. Afterward, everyone shared funny updates about things happening back home. By 10:30, they all agreed it was time to wrap things up. They said goodbye with hugs. The group from Cowtown headed west, and the musicians put away their instruments, ready for a much-needed rest. Lila and Will, although awake early, were the last ones to join breakfast. They smiled through a few playful comments and made an exciting announcement. "Lila, Lena, and I finished 3 of Lila's songs and 4 of Lena's. I've contributed some lyrics, but they created the heart of the songs and the arrangements. I truly think you will all enjoy them." Once the excitement calmed down, he added, "I've also written a few new ones I'd love for you all to help arrange. Don't ask me when I found the time, they just came to me. They're different, but I really like them." They started debuting the new songs a little after 10 and finished before noon. Everyone agreed that all of them should be included on the 3rd album, and many could likely become popular singles. Though they needed more work, they took their time, sitting on the deck in the cool November air. Eventually, they would move to the practice garage, but by then, it would just be about adding a few final touches. The band collaborated really well in the peaceful Texas setting. Maybe it was the quiet, or perhaps it was knowing they were appreciated not just for their music, or maybe they just worked better when they felt relaxed. Will still had worries that would pop up occasionally, but his lawyers were busy dealing with matters far away. The message from their first album had reached a much larger audience than they realized, sparking a rebellion back at home, and outside influences were starting to reach into their hometown. As they put away their instruments and enjoyed their first drinks, Will's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, frowned, got up, and walked inside. "What's going on, Dad?" he asked, worry in his voice. "More than I can explain right now, son. But I have 3 people here who want to talk to you if you're open to it. You're on speaker, so—" "And who are they?" he asked, feeling cautious. "Your ex-wife and your ex-in-laws. I understand it might be uncomfortable, but your mom and I think it might be a good idea." "Sorry, Dad, but I can't. Remember the restraining order? I've already been to the old jail once, and I have no plans to go back again." "Will, this is Al. Peggy and I aren't part of the order. Can you talk to us?" "Why should I? You both left me when things started going wrong. I can't see any reason to help you now. Plus, there's nothing you can say that will change the past or my plans for court. We're just wasting time." "Son, I know." "Don't call me that. You lost the right when you went along with your daughter's claim that I mistreated her and my kids. She lied, and you both knew it. But let me tell you, Al, when I get full custody of the children, I will let you and Peggy visit them at my parents' house on special occasions. That's more than what your daughter has done for my family." Sarah cried. "Will, please don't take my children." Nana, remember the court order, Al? I can't talk to anyone on that list, and that voice sounded too much like Sarah." He could hear her whimpering and sobbing. Then the voice said, "Daddy, tell him what I said. I'll get the court order lifted as soon as I can so we can talk and he can see the kids." Al asked, "Did you hear that?" "No, I told you I can't and won't talk to anyone in the order. If you have something to say it. Otherwise, I'm leaving." "Okay," Sarah says. "Nope, I don't know if that's allowed or not, but I'm not taking any chances. You people have hurt me too much already, so I'm not risking anything." "I understand, Will. I'm asking you to think again about your custody request. Sarah may have treated you unfairly, but she's a good mother, and losing the children would really hurt her," Will scoffed. "A good mother? Is that what you just said? That's nonsense. I was a better father than she is a mother, and she hurt me without any regret. She lied to get custody and keep me from seeing my kids, ruining my good name in the process. I went from Father of the Year to being seen as abusive, so don't try to pull at my heartstrings. I have none. Besides, from what I've heard, there's been a lot of neglect in that house since she started living with the man she chose while we were still married. My investigators have evidence that my children have spent a lot of time with a nanny or babysitters. There are also whispers that her partner may have harmed my children in ways that I was wrongfully accused of. If that's true, she might start looking for a new partner soon." The crying got louder and more upset. Will listened quietly, taking in the tension, until the crying quieted down, and he heard Sarah speaking to her mom. "Will, this is Peggy," she said, struggling to breathe. "Is there anything Sarah or I can do to improve things between us?" "Have you listened to the album, Peggy?" "Yes, many times, and it hurts so much. If the songs hurt you, think about how the experiences affected the songwriter. Can you mend that hurt? No? Then give the phone back to Dad. Take it off speaker, Dad." "I did, son. Don't give them false hope. They created this situation themselves, including the Smithermans and their family. I cared for their daughter and did my best, but they turned against me. I am determined to get justice for myself, and nothing will stop me. If you start to feel weak, remember that they denied your rights as grandparents too. I understand, Will, but the pain is wide and deep, and there is more to the story than you realize. One thing is sure. Whatever happens in court, the community is already very different." "Good. That's my goal. Let us talk to them some more. I think Sarah now understands how angry you are, and she sees the consequences of their actions. Maybe we can speed up your access to your children without waiting for the courts." "Perhaps, but don't promise them anything from me because I won't hold back. There will be consequences, and it won't be me or my parents facing them." Sarah didn't have the chance to lift the restraining order. Will's strong legal connections, the potential for judicial review, and growing public pressure made Judge Smitherman step back from any cases involving his family. The new judge was chosen from a list maintained by the state of Texas. He had recently retired at the age of 62 and knew about the troubles in Cow County long before Will's songs became popular. He moved quickly when he took on his new job. After setting a date for a hearing on Will's request to lift the restraining order, he pushed Child Protective Services, CPS, to reopen the case and talk to all the witnesses again. Clara Jones, the social worker who decided Will was not a good parent, resigned and went into hiding. She faced a subpoena, pressure from the media, and a lot of public anger due to Will's album. The young woman who took Clara's place at CPS quickly interviewed the children and their mother. The children talked about all the good things they said about their dad during their first interview. When asked about life without him, they shared concerning details about their treatment by their new stepdad and how their mother had changed since separating from Dad. When San Juana Ortiz came into the interview room, Mom felt cornered. She had known San Juana since they were kids, and she had not treated her well in the past. San Juana was not a relative. If she repeated her earlier lies, the children, their friends, and probably both sets of parents would speak up and tell the truth to the new judge. If it was shown that she lied, it was clear that Will would get full custody. She would find herself on the outside of their lives, possibly facing serious consequences. If she continued to lie and Will still won custody, she knew he would keep the kids away from her as revenge. She thought, "I'm stuck no matter what I do." She stammered and avoided giving a clear answer until the caseworker got tired of her delay and asked directly, "Are you changing your previous statement, Mrs. Smitherman? Because I don't hear anything about physical or emotional abuse in what you just said." Trying to change her approach, she responded, "That was a very tough time. I was confused and took medication to help with my anxiety. I don't remember much about the interview where I supposedly made those claims. I was told to just answer yes or no, with Donnie indicating how I should respond. Let me clarify, Mrs. Smitherman. At this moment, without any confusing medications or outside influences on how to respond, please explain the times when your former husband, William Callahan, hurt you or your children. Before you answer, I need to let you know that I have access to hospital and clinic records, and I will check your statements." Sarah pretended to think deeply about the question, but she was really trying to figure out what answer would not get her into more trouble. Finally, she gave in. "I can't. I don't know how Clara figured that out, but I don't remember Will ever hurting me or our kids." Mrs. Ortiz sighed. "Then please tell me about the times and situations in which Mr. Callahan upset you or your children, as you said in your previous talk with Clara Jones." Sarah focused on how to fix her earlier statements, deciding to stick with the story of being confused and misled by Clara while feeling controlled by Donnie. Mrs. Ortiz had known Sarah and Will for a long time. She had 3 children herself, the oldest of whom Will coached in t-ball. Sarah noticed that Mrs. Ortiz looked unconvinced and unsympathetic. "I've known you all my life, Sarah Mrs. Smitherman, and it's hard for me to believe you are some confused person whose partner tells her what to say when asked about her husband hurting her and her kids. You have always been a clever and strong woman who planned everything carefully. Do you want to try again? Do you want to add anything to this statement? After all, you are saying your ex-husband did nothing wrong. Is that what you really mean?" With a touch of defiance on her face and a spark in her eyes, Sarah replied, "No, I have nothing to add. I've told you what I remember." San Juana Ortiz stood up, shook hands with the well-practiced storyteller in front of her, gave her a quick, hard look of disapproval, covered it with a fake smile, and said, "The judge wants me to share my findings as soon as my report is ready. That will happen tomorrow at 10. If you think of anything you want to add or change, let me know by 8 a.m. If not, I'll see you in court." She emphasized the last part, and Sarah understood what it meant. She was likely to lose her children to her ex and might be accused of making a false report about domestic issues. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad if Will got the kids, Sarah thought. As Donnie got more involved in politics, they became busier in community activities, which meant leaving the kids with her parents for longer periods. Her parents were happy to spend time with their grandchildren, but they complained that her absences were happening too often and lasting too long. This made her feel guilty, but not guilty enough to stop attending exciting events with Donnie. So she found a couple of babysitters who would watch her kids overnight or even for 2 days, as long as she paid them enough. She knew they mostly just supervised the children and fed them takeout junk food. Also, she was aware they were likely to share stories about her. "Oh well, Will has always been the better parent," she reminded herself with a sigh. "He'll have both sets of grandparents to help when he performs. My parents like him more than me, and I know he will invite them back into his life eventually. Donnie is not fond of raising Will's kids anyway, so he will be pleased with them being with Will. I'll miss them, but I'll have more time to go out with Donnie, so that makes it fair." She hadn't noticed that their social invitations were fading quickly, just like Donnie's political dreams. This showed how lost in her own world Sarah truly was. She was not alone in this enchanted reality. The city and county's power held a similar belief that they were untouchable by outside forces and fairness. Then a new band released an album and videos, and suddenly, the comfortable leaves of their lives were shaken off. As the leaves fell, karma caught up to them. Sheriff Alderman already faced a challenger in the March primary. Juan Garcia, a local who had just finished a 20-year career in the Army Military Police, was stepping up. He had served in tough areas before coming back to teach at the academy in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and had returned home to help his aging parents. Everyone knew the sheriff's office had issues, and it was clear that Juan was set to win the election by a large margin. The 65-year-old judge also found himself with a challenger, a local woman with a degree from Texas 8A&M, a law degree from UT, 9 years as an assistant district attorney in San Antonio, and 8 years in private practice in Pleasanton. She was married to a family doctor who also worked in Pleasanton, and they had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Their kids excelled in school and sports, earning many awards and honors. Since the judicial district included both Atascosa County and Cow County, Judge Smitherman's position seemed threatened. Candidate Sylvia Cardenas was expected to perform strongly in the densely populated Atascosa County, where they lived. The growing anger against the Smithermans, including the judge, and the news that Sylvia and her husband were buying a ranch just outside Cowtown made it clear she would likely win Cow County too. Corrupt Judge Smitherman had been exposed by Will and had to step aside from any cases where he had a conflict of interest thanks to Will's lawyers. His bad reputation as a harsh ruler had kept the community under control for years, but now he didn't scare anyone anymore. The county judge, a laid-back guy who just went along with things, had a popular opponent, Tim Garza. Timbo had already gained support from 2 local celebrities, and their band had made 3 catchy tunes in his favor. The 2 county commissioners who were up for re-election also faced challengers not connected to the old power structure, and Sierra Garza, Tim's wife, declared she was running for tax assessor collector against a Smitherman supporter known for favoritism in taxes and suspected of misusing public funds. Sierra's catchy tunes reminded people of songs from the first BGH Pundits album. A large credit union from San Antonio announced it would open a branch in Cowtown, located in the newly remodeled Ag Production Credit Building on January 15th. Many residents who had felt mistreated by the local bank owned by the Smitherman family were excited to have a new option. When the new credit union promised to refinance existing loans and provide low-interest loans and mortgages, disappointed customers started to prepare to switch banks. 2 days later, International Trade Logistics, ITL, announced it would build a big distribution center just across the highway from Cowtown and began hiring. They advertised attractive pay that was double the usual rates in the area for positions from trainee to manager. They also offered paid medical, dental, and vision insurance, along with free daycare for employees. Opportunities for growth and advancement were promised to hardworking employees. For 2 working parents, the benefits of joining ITL meant a significant increase in pay. With the thriving oil field and ITL, Cowtown had never seen job opportunities like these, and many people rushed to fill out online applications. With so many new positions available, many lower-paying and difficult jobs would soon be empty. This meant that some businesses, including possibly one or both Smitherman-owned plants, might have to improve their pay and benefits to stay in business. Even if they wanted to go back, most people would look for a new beginning and a workplace that cared for its employees, unlike the Smitherman's businesses. The plant run by the family seemed to be particularly noticed in the ITL ads. Around the same time, the IRS started to take an interest in the plant's tax returns and those of its manager. Donny Boy IV was feeling the pressure. Like others in his wealthy circle, he was facing problems due to his own poor choices. While the legal system took its time, the BGH pundits were busy rehearsing, performing in dance halls across South and Central Texas, and working on their third album. They had already played every song live, and the positive reactions made them believe this album would be the hit they had been dreaming of for a long time. The final lyrics came from teamwork between Lila, Lena, and Will, with ideas from Woody. Putting the songs together involved everyone, especially Gary and Danny, while the music videos took shape mostly thanks to their tech team and manager. Although the band had musical skill, they didn't always connect with their fans or understand the latest technology and trends the younger crowd enjoyed. The different backgrounds of the band members created a mix of musical styles that was unlike anything they, their manager, or the producer could remember seeing on one album. Lila brought folk sounds, Lena added blues and bluegrass, Danny contributed southern rock, Gary offered a unique blend of 1950s and 1970s country, Woody had his red dirt country style, and Will's western storytelling was also part of their 16 tracks. Soar was completely different from their first, more focused album. The variety allowed the musicians to show off their skills on many instruments, making the melodies stand out and grab attention. Each song had strong, memorable lyrics. They were excited for the early spring release of the BGH pundits' Soar. Their first album and Unfettered had received attention and praise, but once the songs from Soar were performed at their shows, the word spread quickly. The music world is vast but connected. What happened in Texas dance halls usually didn't concern the big names in Nashville and Los Angeles, but the excitement from fans on social media, at ticket sales, and in their music and merchandise purchases caught everyone's notice. When major label representatives show interest in a local band in McMullen County, it's clear they are serious. While they appreciated the interest and opportunities, the pundits stayed calm. They were not certain that they wanted or needed the control that came with those big contracts. If they signed, they could no longer create concept albums or freely explore their music. Ironically, it was their unique style that attracted the big labels to the brush country in the first place. Based on Woody's experience and that of many others, most labels would push them into a specific kind of music that they thought would succeed. This did not appeal to anyone in the band. For Woody, it felt like a repeat of a bad situation from before. So, he enjoyed playing games with his old label. They kept the big companies waiting for a while before their manager let them know that, in today's digital age, the band felt there wasn't enough benefit in giving up their creative control and sharing their profits. They were taking a big risk, 2 chances for the one offer on the table. Yes, turning down this path might lead to the band members becoming wealthy and famous for a long time. On the other hand, if their new route didn't work out, they could still have a strong local, maybe statewide, following, and earn a good living while making the music they wanted. That route didn't seem so bad either. Each member had more money than they had ever dreamed of, with plenty still coming in, and they were having fun. Although it took a long while for the legal system to address William Andrew Callahan's cases against his ex-wife and her new partner, it quickly dealt with the restraining order against him. The judge dismissed the order, criticized the social worker and her supervisors for not doing a good job with the investigation, hinted that it might have been intentional, and suggested that the district attorney look into her actions. The judge also questioned the actions of the sheriff and the truthfulness of Mrs. Callahan and Mr. Donald Bradley Smitherman in their statements. He found issues with the earlier judge's choices and suggested that, at the very least, that judge should have stepped back from the case. All these concerns were sent to the district attorney for review and possible action. Judge Adams did allow Mrs. Callahan to keep primary custody of the children in the family home until the divorce hearing. However, he granted Mr. Callahan generous and unsupervised visitation rights immediately, telling the parents to agree on a schedule, or he would set one for them. Sarah, who stood with her parents behind her, greeted Will and San Juana at the door on Friday. She looked very different from the arrogant person who had falsely accused him and had once found joy in his pain. Her parents looked embarrassed and sorry, and he was welcomed home like a special guest. Will glanced around the living and dining rooms with a serious expression and hard eyes. "He's not here," Sarah said softly. "I wouldn't do that to you." He turned quickly to his wife, gave her a sarcastic look, and said, "Of course you wouldn't." She paled, her parents grew red, and Will asked roughly, "Where are my children?" "Andrew, Sarah-Lynn, come down. I have a surprise," Sarah called out loudly. The doors to their rooms opened, and his lovely children came out. They hadn't seen each other in 15 months, and they had grown so much that it made his heart ache. He realized he had missed so many important moments in their lives. Andrew was 9 years old, and Sarah-Lynn was 7. Because of the restraining order, he had missed 2 birthdays and 2 Christmases. Andrew was tall for his age, with broad shoulders, sandy hair, and green eyes just like him. Sarah-Lynn was smaller, with dark hair like their mom, but she also had Will's green eyes. Will's heart filled with pride when he saw those green eyes shine, the surprised smiles on their faces, and heard their joyful screams when they saw their dad. He bent down as they rushed down the stairs, and they jumped into his open arms. Wordlessly, they held each other close, kissing his cheeks as he kissed theirs. Finally, Sarah-Lynn held his face in her small hands and with great emotion said, "Daddy, we missed you so much. We wanted to call you and see you, but no one would let us. Mommy said you left us, but our friends told us the law wouldn't let you talk to us or come visit us. Why, Daddy? Why did you leave us?" Will glanced at his wife and her parents, but before he could respond, San Juana stepped in. "Sweetheart, your daddy wanted to see you, but the law made an error. They thought he was being unkind, so they said he couldn't see or talk to you. But after I told the new judge what you and Andrew said, he fixed the error and said it was okay for your daddy to see you again." Sarah-Lynn looked confused and replied, "But we told the other lady, Mom's cousin Clara, the same thing. Daddy never hurt us. He played with us, read to us, and helped us with school. He is the best daddy in the world. He never even raised his voice unless we were really bad." 9-year-olds understand more than 7-year-olds, and Andrew was glaring at his mother and grandparents. "I don't think that's the whole story." The kids at school said everyone in town knows that Mom lied about Dad hitting us, and Grammy and Gramps told the sheriff it was true. I don't know why they lied about Dad hitting us and then lied again about Mom's boyfriend not hitting us, but my friends say that their lies are why Dad has been away for so long, and I believe them. Will stood up and looked at his wife and in-laws with anger. "Donnie hit my children?" he asked in a cold voice. "And you two said he didn't?" His father-in-law quickly replied, "That's not exactly true, Andrew. Grammy and I were asked if we had seen Donnie hit you or yell at you or your sister. We said we hadn't, but you and Sarah-Lynn had told us that he did." Will took a step closer to his wife. San Juana grabbed his arm and said, "Will, don't!" In a voice that surprised everyone, Will declared, "You, my dear wife and the mother of my children, lie and say I hurt and yelled at the children I love when you know I didn't. And now you lie and say Donnie didn't when you know he did? I will make sure everyone knows the truth, and I will change my request to stop you and these two from seeing the kids. And as for Donald Bradley, tell him I'm looking for him and when I find him." "That's enough, Will. Don't say anything more," San Juana ordered. "You're too angry right now. Take your children to the ranch. You don't want to say things you might regret. Just go on, your friends are waiting in the truck. I'll get their things and meet you at the ranch." With one last look at the Parkers, Will picked up his kids and took them to the waiting van. He introduced them to Gary, the driver, and their friends Danny, Lena, and Lila. Then he pointed to Woody and asked, "Do you remember this old buddy?" Woody smiled and said, "Of course they remember their favorite uncle, Uncle Woody. Come here, you two, I've missed you." Andrew smiled and stepped forward, but Sarah-Lynn shouted, "Uncle Woody!" and jumped into his lap. He hugged her and swayed their bodies side to side while playfully growling, making her giggle. After putting her down next to him, he reached for Andrew. "Come here, big boy. Just because you're getting older doesn't mean you can't hug your favorite uncle." Woody playfully lifted Andrew like he had with Sarah-Lynn, and they both laughed. When he let Andrew go, the boy stumbled back onto the seat with Lena, who quickly started chatting with him and Lila, who turned sideways to join them. The young women showed the men how to talk with a 9-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl in a fun and age-appropriate way. Once everyone understood where Saralyn and Andrew stood in terms of maturity, they could talk freely in the van. The 50-mile trip along the farm-to-market roads went by quickly. San Juana stayed just long enough to drop off the luggage and check that the living arrangements were good. Before leaving, Will said, "San Juana, I want to thank you and also apologize for what happened earlier. My ex-wife and Donnie have really tested my patience, and hearing Andrew's words hit me hard. I've got my emotions in check now, and I will avoid those kinds of talks about her in the future. Your temper is famous, Will, but you did well considering the circumstances. Just remember, don't confront Donnie physically. That could land you in trouble even without his connections," she advised. "It might be wise to consider a restraining order against Donnie based on what Andrew and Saralyn are saying. That could help in keeping things peaceful when Sarah has custody. Just think about it," she added with a playful smile before getting into her car and driving away. The kids were thrilled with the large ranch house sitting high above the river, and they eagerly wanted to ride the ATVs parked nearby. Woody shouted, "Let's go!" and they jumped on for a fun tour. When they paused the engines on a hill overlooking the Frio River, Andrew said, "I really love this place. We've always lived in town, but some of my best friends have ranches like this, and I've spent weekends with them. Saralyn has too. We're friends with Thomas and Angela, so we sometimes stay at Alexander's ranch when Mom and Brad go away." "So, Brad, huh? Is that what he wanted you to call him?" Will asked. "Not at first. He wanted us to call him Dad, but we told him we couldn't because we already have a dad," Andrew said firmly. "Then he wanted us to say Uncle Brad, and I told him he's not our uncle. He got really upset and yelled a lot, but in the end, we just call him Brad." "Looks like he's back to being just Brad," Woody said with a grin. "I guess Donnie wasn't grand enough." Will chuckled, which made Lila glance over at him. She then gathered the kids inside to get a snack while they waited for the guests. "I'll handle the hamburgers," Will announced, lighting the mesquite fire he had prepared in the barbecue pit yesterday. "You all take care of everything else." By the time the fire turned into good cooking coals, the guests started arriving. Among the regulars and their kids, there were 3 couples with children who were good friends of Saralyn and Andrew, including the Alexanders. Sierra had suggested that Will invite them, and seeing his children's excitement confirmed it was a great choice. Though new to the ranch get-togethers, all 3 couples were friendly faces from Will and Woody's school days. They were happy to be invited and easily fit in with the regulars and the band members. The meal featured grilled burgers or cheeseburgers, grilled onions, and toasted buns with mayo and mustard. Guests could choose toppings like shredded lettuce, tomatoes, sliced avocados, grilled peppers, and dill pickle chips. For starters, there were tostadas with fresh salsa and guacamole, and dessert was chocolate chip cookies. It was a simple meal for a nice fall day in the countryside. Games were brought out, some for adults and some for kids. They played horseshoes, cornhole, darts, and tossed frisbees. They even drew chalk lines on the sidewalks and concrete for hopscotch and foursquare. Will, Lila, and Lena mainly played with the children, giving the parents a well-deserved break for a few hours. By the time the sun began to set, the party wrapped up, goodbyes were said, and the evening chill sent the remaining guests back inside. Woody and Danny gathered kindling and small logs to start a fire in the fireplace. They all huddled around it as the kids roasted marshmallows while Lena and Lila made s'mores for everyone. Soon, Will's daughter climbed onto his lap looking sleepy. He took her and Andrew to their bathrooms. Andrew quickly washed up and got into bed, while Lila convinced Saralyn to join her for a bubble bath before tucking the little one in for the night. To avoid giving Sarah any chances in the upcoming custody issue, Will and Lena decided to sleep separately that night, something they hadn't done in a long time. It wasn't easy, but when Saralyn rushed into her daddy's room the next morning, it showed they made the right choice. The big waffle maker was finishing up its last batch, the 3rd skillet of bacon was sizzling, and 16 scrambled eggs were piled high in a bowl while the kids waited eagerly and the adults enjoyed their coffee. A shiny new 4-door pickup truck pulled up and parked in front. Will's parents got out, and the children's excitement grew. "Nana, Papa!" shouted their granddaughter, echoed by their grandson. They spent a few moments hugging and chatting excitedly until Will reminded them that breakfast was getting cold. The kids insisted their grandparents join them, and everyone else faded into the background as they enjoyed their meal and conversation. 6 smiling faces watched happily as the grandparents and grandchildren joyfully reunited for the first time in over a year. Will's mother and father were devoted Episcopalians, while the band members were a mix of different beliefs, including 2 Catholics, a Methodist, a Baptist, an agnostic, and Will, who had once been Episcopalian. They hadn't been to a church or service since they started the band, but that changed at 10:30 when Mom opened her canvas bag. She took out her Bible and another book and handed the bag to Dad. Some of them might have said no if they could, but when she opened the Book of Common Prayer and said it was time for morning prayers, they just waited for her to start. Dad passed out 5 more books, asked everyone to share, and told them to turn to page 11. He asked who wanted to read the first Bible verse and gave that role to Andrew, promising Saralyn she would be next. So they began. The short service inspired Lena and Lila so much that they got out their guitars to play some gospel songs and modern praise music. The others sang along with the songs they knew, and everyone was amazed that the 2 young women remembered so many worship songs. The games from yesterday were still set up, and the kids wanted to practice, saying, "We want to win next time." They all went outside to play games in the warm sunshine and cool breeze. Will, Nana, Lila, and Lena played with the kids while Papa and the other men had their own competitions, and everyone was having a great time. An hour later, another pickup truck arrived and parked. Will frowned and stepped in that direction, but his mom grabbed his arm and said, "No, son, we invited them. We know you're upset with them, but you don't have the whole story. Let them share their side, we'll share what we know, and then you can decide how to feel." Turning to Lila, she asked, "Could you keep the kids busy for a bit? Will needs to speak with his in-laws, and we need to be there." "I would love to, Mrs. Callahan," Lila said sincerely. Then she turned back and joined the giggling kids in a game of hopscotch. Before she began, Lena shot Will a questioning look. He replied with a shrug. Inside, Will let everyone sit down and took a chair facing the grandparents. "Will, I know you might be upset with us, but we had to think about your children first," Peggy started. Will listened quietly as Peggy and Al shared the challenges they had faced and explained their choices. When they finished, Will looked at his parents coolly. "Do you have something to add, Mother?" Beatrice, B, understood her son well. She could tell he was affected but still not pleased. They needed to convince him for the sake of his children. "Will, everything Al and Peggy said is true. You probably remember that they supported you at first, but when Sarah cut off both sets of grandparents from seeing the kids, we all met and agreed that they had to find a way to allow some contact, or the children would be in a difficult situation with their upset mother and the people she was close to, whom Saralyn and Andrew didn't like. So we made a deal. They would stop defending you publicly and act as if they were on their daughter's side, but without saying they had ever seen you mistreat your children. Sarah and Donnie started going away for weekend trips, leaving their children with teenage babysitters. We worried something bad might happen to the kids, so the Parkers offered to look after them when Sarah and Donnie left town. Usually when they were gone overnight or for a few days, they left the kids with Peggy and Al, but on weeknights, they hired sitters so they could attend social events and meetings. For a few months, they were away almost every weekend and several nights a week. When they returned, they often seemed careless about the kids. We talked about what to do, including the Parkers possibly seeking custody because of their neglect. Then your songs about neglect and abuse started to play on the radio and online. This turned into big news, and people began to avoid Sarah and even teased her. She felt like those songs were about her and Donnie, and it really affected her. That was when they began to go out less and stop traveling on weekends. Donnie was very angry at you, and Sarah started to stay home more because of what people said to her when she went out, even for groceries. It's strange, but she was hiding from the same accusations she made against you. Peggy and Al would say she finally got to see what it's like to be blamed unfairly. Since their mom was with them all the time during that period, we felt the kids were safe. So, we decided not to pursue custody at that moment and waited to see what your next move would be. When the lawsuit started, we realized you were serious, so we met again to think of ways for Peggy and Al to keep the kids safe and help you understand their actions. This isn't easy, but we're trying to condense over a year's events into less than an hour, Will's mom said with a sigh. What else do you need to know? Will kept a serious expression while listening to the Parkers and his mother. He looked at each person, ending with Al. So, you made changes to my role and both of you stayed silent while my image as a husband and father fell apart. But you did this for the kids? I'm confused about how that makes sense. No, Al, I don't want an answer, yet. Just let me continue. I actually don't want answers to any of my questions until I'm finished, then I'll give you a chance to respond. You often said you cared about me, but how long did you know your daughter was being unfaithful before I found out? It's hard to see you as good friends when you let me be misled for months without telling me. Since the restraining order, not a single one of you reached out. If you cared about me, why didn't you? You must have known I was worried sick about my kids. And why didn't you let my parents see their grandchildren? You could have brought them over while Sarah and Donnie were away. They care about them too, you know. Al looked at the others and then focused on Will. The simple answer to everything except the first question is Donnie and Donald. They visited us one evening after we had a talk with Sarah about how little she was around the children. They warned us that we were being watched like our phones and cars. They claimed they knew our every move. Donnie threatened us with bad consequences for Saralyn and Andrew if we didn't stay out of their lives, or if we talked to you or your parents again. We grandparents met a few times after that, in Laredo and San Antonio, but we were all scared because of their threats against Saralyn and Andrew. I'm sorry about what happened at work. It was my chance to stand up to Sarah and Donnie, but I didn't, Will. We genuinely had no idea about the cheating until you brought it to light. And I ended up in jail. I knew the risks were against me, but I went ahead and made their case for a restraining order, Will said. That felt foolish later, even if it felt good at the time. But why didn't anyone support me when Sarah made false claims against me? You all knew I would never do that. That's when we made our agreement, son, B said. We had to look out for the children. It certainly wasn't going to be Donnie or his family, and by then Sarah was completely under his control. She did whatever he said, no matter how unfair it was to you. Al and Peggy were not happy, but we knew you would want someone to protect your children, and that was the cost. Will, believe me, no one thinks that nonsense is true, his dad added. From the start, people were coming to me saying they knew it was all lies, but everyone was too scared to stand up. If the Parkers had sided with the Smithermans, they would have faced losing their jobs or worse. But your music moved this community, Will. It touched us all, Peggy said. It felt like someone switched on a bright light, chasing away the dark. And suddenly we all saw the Smithermans and their friends for what they really were, small and not scary at all, instead of big, threatening figures. Now that the truth is out and others are stepping in, it seems like all the fear has just vanished, Al said. That's why everyone in the group of leaders has someone running against them, and those challengers are likely to win the elections. Will laughed lightly. So, the pen really is more powerful than the sword, at least when the sword wielders are like bugs, right? All right, let's get to the point. Your little group has convinced me, I guess. I might have more questions later, but I'm going to move past my anger toward you. It's not really about forgiveness since you were doing what you thought was best for your grandchildren, my children. And I want them to have your wisdom and love. So from my side, everything is okay now. But I do have one big request. I want to be around for the kids, but I also have band commitments that will take me away sometimes. I hope that 2 or even all 4 of you can join us on weekends when I have the kids, so you can help take care of Andrew and Saralyn while I perform. That way, you can enjoy our music too. The grandparents nodded at each other in agreement, and Will added, Just to test this, our next 2 shows are on weekends when I don't have the kids, but we will be at the Arneson River Theater in San Antonio on New Year's Eve when I do. I'll make sure you have a nice place to stay because I want you all to come along and help with Andrew and Saralyn. If possible, I'd love for you to join us for an early dinner, then come to the concert from 8 to 10. After that, we can take a boat ride on the river. If the kids can stay awake, we can watch the fireworks at midnight and celebrate what I hope will be a much better year. While they were discussing plans, Will went to find Lila. Lena, can you and the others play games with them for a little while longer? It's time for my girlfriend to meet the grandparents. Lila's eyes went wide as she looked at her outfit. She was wearing jeans and a hoodie with bright sports shoes. Her hair was pulled back messily, and after having fun with the kids, she had little makeup left from the morning. "Will, I don't think this is the best time." He took her hand, smiled, and said, "You look wonderful. The kids adore you, and they're going to love having you around. Come on." At first, Lila didn't want to go, but Will gently pulled her along, and Lena assured her that she looked great and everything would be fine. So Lila took a deep breath, tidied her hair and clothes, and stepped inside while Will held the door for her. Putting on her performing persona, Lila smiled brightly, stood tall, and showed a friendly attitude. The grandparents were chatting in a circle until Lila and Will stopped about 10 feet away. They turned to look at them. Will smiled and said, "I want you all to meet someone. This is my bandmate, Lila Rebecca Tate. Lila, these are Peggy Parker and Al Parker, Andrew and Sarah Lynn's grandparents." He added, "You met my parents earlier, but I didn't finish introducing you." Will wrapped his arm around her waist and continued, "I'm sure you've seen Lila perform at our shows and heard her wonderful voice on our songs. But what you might not know is, she's also my girlfriend." The two men smiled warmly, but the women's smiles turned a bit stiff, hiding their curiosity and concern. After shaking hands and saying hello, Bea and Peggy quickly led Lila to the kitchen for some coffee and conversation. Will took the men outside to introduce Al, and he reminded Lena to check on Lila before taking charge of the playground fun. Lena went inside, and the grandfathers came over to help Will. "Andrew, Sarah Lynn, I've talked to your Grammy and Gramps, and now I understand some of the things they've done. I love them, and I know you love them too, so we'll be spending more time together." Sarah Lynn beamed and ran to Gramps, while Andrew looked a bit unsure, but he relaxed when Will whispered, "I'll tell you about it later," and nodding towards his grandpa. The grandfathers took over at the playground, and Will slipped away to check on the girls. He looked through the kitchen window and saw the girls chatting and laughing with the grandmothers. He let out a sigh of relief and went back to his bandmates. They were strumming guitars, drumming on the table, and working on some new songs that needed extra ideas. They all stopped when he walked up. "All clear?" Woody asked. "Should we take that as a good sign?" "You can," Will replied as he picked up his guitar and joined in. After an hour, Lila came back outside, arm in arm with his mother, both smiling. Lena led Peggy, Al, and Dad out. "Where are Andrew and Sarah Lynn?" Will asked. "Watching Disney on that big TV with tons of channels," Dad answered. "Who owns this house?" Al inquired. "And what's that brand on the gate?" "This was my Uncle Talbot's ranch until recently. His health isn't great, and Aunt Minnie is in a nursing home nearby, so he needs to be close to her and his doctors. He was having trouble coming out here to manage things, so he sold the ranch to me," Woody said. "Is that something you forgot to tell us until just now, buddy?" Will asked with a laugh. "It's not a big deal. I found a local couple to take care of the cattle and the house, so owning the ranch won't interfere with our music. Well, since you've settled in, I've got some news too. Remember Vincent's Crossing on the Nueces? The wealthy person who bought it from my great-aunt started to run out of money and tried to make it big with cryptocurrency. That didn't work out so well, and he got in trouble with some lenders. They lost patience just when I offered him 50 cents on the dollar cash. He took it. I haven't been there since Aunt May got it from my grandfather's estate 13 years ago. I bought it without seeing it and paid a lot of money for it, even though it was half the asking price. For all I know, I could have bought something that would cost me even more in repairs. My realtor, Tina Welch, promises me he fixed the roads and fences and built what she called a great lodge with guest houses. But she admits she hasn't seen the place in years. She didn't even go check when he called her in a panic, asking if she could find a buyer who could pay cash immediately. She called me, knowing I might be interested since it was my great-grandfather's homestead and that I might have the cash to buy quickly. I told her I was interested, but not at that price. She asked me to make an offer, so I offered half, saying that's all I could afford. She laughed at my offer, but he didn't. I guess his situation mattered more to him than the ranch. Woody remembers the place, but the rest of you have only seen it from a distance at Billy Goat Hill, which is a couple of miles away. The Nueces River runs through the middle, and there's an old county road that is now private. It has an old bridge over the river. That bridge is probably from the 1800s. We used to swim in the river and have picnics under the oak trees. Tina says most of the old buildings my ancestors built are gone, and the new ones are on a hill that looks over the river from the northwest, where we used to hunt. The owner has until 3 this afternoon to take whatever he wants, which is why I begged off the practice session tonight. I'm really eager to see it so I can decide if I want to keep it or sell it, and I plan to be at the gate right after 3. Anyone want to come along? Lila knew about his secret purchase, but the others teased him for keeping it a secret before deciding they wanted to go see it too. Will's dad had tears in his eyes, happy that the historic ranch was back in the family. He gave Will a big hug and a pat on the back. I'm so glad you two are using some of that extra cash to buy something meaningful. You know what they say? You can take the boys out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boys. Lila and the kids rode in Will's pickup while their friends rode in Woody's truck. The grandparents took the Parkers' SUV after they dropped off the Callahan's SUV at the high school parking lot. Tina met them there. She was another friend from high school and was full of excitement about the old Callahan place being back with the Callahans. She handed Will the keys, remotes, and a USB drive with all the security codes, and then asked if she could join them. I haven't been out there since a Christmas party 5 years ago. He only had a few parties after that, but Tad and I didn't get invited. I really want to see it again, she said. When I was there, it was beautiful. I'm not sure about now since he wouldn't even let me visit, but I believe it's worth at least what Will paid. Tina climbed into Woody's truck and entertained everyone with stories about the historic ranch during the short 10-minute ride. At the entrance, there was a large, fancy steel gate. It was opened with the remotes, and there was a keypad beside the driver's window for visitors. The road was made of crushed limestone over a solid base and needed some work, but it was built well above the rich black soil, which they knew could get very muddy when wet. When they entered the ranch, Tina took the lead, so Woody followed closely. She called Will on his phone, which was connected to Bluetooth, allowing everyone in his truck to hear about the sights they passed. While Will and Lila had seen an aerial photo, everything looked different from the ground. They drove slowly by the main house, 2 guest houses, and a game room, all surrounding a central area with grass, trees, and a swimming pool. The concrete around the pool looked like it was at least 20 feet wide all around. Metal tables with umbrellas and padded chairs were scattered around, along with padded loungers. It all looked more like something from a city park than a ranch in the countryside. At Tina's suggestion, they drove up a gentle slope behind the guest houses to a large metal building that they guessed was about 15,000 square feet. The building had windows, doors, a sidewalk, and a fenced lawn on the side facing the houses. The southwest side had covered horse stalls, while the northwest side contained 3 bays for vehicles. A wide concrete alley, with roll-up doors at each end, divided the stalls from the main part of the building. About 2/3 of the barn-dominium was living space, featuring 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom at the back. The front had an open area that combined a kitchen, dining room, and living room. As they looked around, they found that the last third of the space had once been used for storing equipment, but all the saddles, ropes, and other items were gone. There was a small office in the back corner by the alley door, but it was also empty. The living area still had all its furniture and appliances, and the 3 vehicle bays were full. The first bay held a large New Holland tractor with a front loader and shredder attached. Behind these, there were a plow, a disc, and a hay baler. The second stall contained 3 2-seat Kawasaki Mule ATVs, while the third held an older but high-quality motorhome with a diesel engine in the back. At first, the group was lively, sharing excitement as they discovered more about the property. But after seeing the barn and its contents, the walk back to the main lodge became quiet and thoughtful. Will couldn't believe his luck, while the others felt a bit uneasy, thinking that such good fortune couldn't last. When Will used the code to open the main lodge door, everyone was amazed. The lodge alone was worth more than what Will had paid for everything. They walked into the great room, a spacious area that had several clusters of couches and chairs facing large TVs, with laptops set up in cozy corners. A long wooden table with 20 chairs filled the dining area, which was separated by a granite top bar from a modern kitchen featuring black granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, plus a big walk-in freezer. Now they were all wide-eyed, and Tina enjoyed their surprise. She nudged Woody and said, "I told you." "No, you didn't," he replied. "This is way more incredible than you described." Lila leaned over to Will and quietly said, "I agree with Woody. You made it sound like a nice ranch, not a mansion with a pool and guest houses." "I had no idea," Will said, still in shock. For once, listening to my instincts instead of overthinking really paid off. "There's a first time for everything," Woody and Tina said together. The rest of the afternoon was spent exploring the 6-bedroom, 7-bath lodge and the guest houses. They enjoyed playing billiards, pool, and shuffleboard in the game room, and they rode ATVs along the improved pasture roads. They were surprised to find that the previous owner left behind all the furniture in the lodge and guest houses, including bedding and kitchen items. However, the previous owner had not taken care of the Nueces River Valley, which was overgrown with brush and full of debris from floods. Everything else, including the nice hunting stands, was well looked after. As the children and grandparents started feeling hungry, the grandparents took them out to eat before heading back to Sarah's house. After some cold beers from Woody's ice chest, the pundits talked thoughtfully. "Karma, that's what it is. Or maybe kismet," Woody said with a frown. "After getting let down so many times, it feels like fate has stepped in. My friend Will is finally having some good luck. He writes hit songs, joins a cool new band, meets a great partner, and now he finds a deal that will make his ex-wife really jealous." "Hey, Will, what are you planning to do with the tack room in the barn?" Gary asked. "I hope you share the same idea I have, Gare," Lena jumped in. "And I hope Will does too." "Well, Gary and I were thinking it would make a fantastic recording studio and practice space. What about you guys?" Will said. "Great minds think alike, my lucky friend. Right, Lena?" Gary responded. "Absolutely," Lila laughed. "I bet we all left that room thinking the same thing. I imagine you saw the guest houses and thought, roommates?" "Actually, Gary and I thought of the barn-dominium as a rental unit for traveling musicians," Danny said. Lena smiled. "I thought the guest house by the diving board would be perfect for your favorite roommate." "Not to be left out," Woody said. "And I'm the ideal guest for the house next to the game room. You won't even notice me when I bring friends over. But just so you know, we'll have to go back to Austin to record. And when it's time to tour, the closest airport is 100 miles away." "That's true, but my kids live less than 5 miles from here," Will replied. "The highway is just a few miles over that hill, and on the east side of town there's a nice airport with a runway for private jets, in case we ever grow big enough for that. Laredo is about an hour south, Corpus is 90 minutes east, San Antonio is about 90 minutes north, and Austin is another hour past that, assuming traffic is moving on I-35. Lastly, Garner State Park and Con Can are less than 2 hours northwest. With the Smitherman's small area falling apart due to the trouble, this could become a great place to live again. If my lawyers are right about the money I'm owed, the people who pushed me out of town will have to buy my family ranch back for me. What do you think? Should we go back to Austin to get our things and settle here, or should we keep moving back and forth?" Gary spoke up first. "Well, this isn't bluegrass country, western Tennessee, or the Appalachians, but it kind of grows on you. I'm not really a city person, so I vote for a fresh start, as long as I get the north bedroom in the barn-dominium." It was agreed that they would move to a ranch less than a mile from Billy Goat Hill, as long as everyone got their favorite room. The next morning at 8 a.m., Will's phone rang. Luckily, Lila had let him sleep for 4 or 5 hours, and his celebration hangover was mild, so he was mostly ready for the day when the investigators shared their update. By the time they were done, he had enjoyed 2 cups of strong coffee and was eager to get started. His next call was to Savage, who already had an electronic copy of the report and was ready to file new lawsuits. Will felt pleased as he thought about the results. Though they had harmed him, what was coming next would hurt them even more, and he couldn't wait to see them suffer as he did. While relaxing and thinking about his plans, a song began to form in his mind. He grabbed his tablet and guitar, and within 15 minutes he had written "Comeuppance." Will left the office and found that Woody had gone to town for breakfast, tacos, milk, better coffee, and groceries for a few meals. Everyone else had eaten, so he enjoyed a taco while sharing the main points of the report. Their laughter and comments lightened the mood a bit, But the betrayal he faced felt so planned, heartless, and cruel that it seemed the songs that had defeated his enemies weren't strong enough. The band was set to create another concept album to reveal their tricks. But Will had a different idea: to celebrate their ending. He played and sang a new song called Comeuppance. This brightened the mood and sparked fresh thoughts for their fourth album. By Friday, they had moved their things from the practice room to the tack room. Their clothes and supplies were in their rooms, rented furniture was picked up, and lease break fees were settled. Workmen had set up sound baffles and acoustic panels in the tack room studio, managed by Lena and Lila while they were in Austin. Barry was not too happy about their choice, but he accepted their promise to keep him informed and make all their scheduled dates. He, along with his latest girlfriend and the tech team, was invited to a party to celebrate the success of their first two albums and their earnings. On the same Friday, Donald Bradley Smitherman was given a notice telling him to stay 500 feet away from Andrew and Sarah Lynn. Reports said he lost control. He made angry remarks and threats to the deputy who delivered the papers, leading to his arrest. Deputy Raul Medina was not connected to the Smithermans. He had his body camera on and seemed to enjoy arresting the arrogant man. The sheriff was out of town without cell service, so he could not step in. The booking process was long and uncomfortable for him. What hit Donald the hardest was the sound of the cell door slamming shut. He shouted, but could do nothing until his court hearing the next day. His son had to spend the night in the same jail Will had been in before. Surrounded by glares and harsh words from the other inmates, he finally felt small and frightened, a feeling he had never experienced before. Morning brought back his confidence. His father would fix everything. No one could treat a Smitherman like this. His dad did get him out on bail, set at $250,000. But they discovered the charges could lead to years in jail. Disorderly conduct, threatening a police officer, resisting arrest, these could mean 3 years behind bars. His father was upset with him, and even angrier at the police and the judge who scolded his son. Who do they think they are? He thought. Don't they know who we are? Smithermans own this town. I'll make sure they regret this. 3 hours later, encouraged by his father's fury and some whiskey, Donald decided to take action. Court order or not, he was going back to Will's house, confronting Will's family, and showing them who was in charge. He felt determined to make his point. If Will tried to interfere, he meant to take drastic actions. As he parked his Escalade in the driveway of Sarah's house, he noticed a police vehicle down the street. Suddenly, a sheriff's SUV sped towards him with its lights flashing. "Sir, get back in your vehicle and leave the area immediately. You're breaking a court order," shouted the officer from the SUV. Frustrated, he raised his middle finger and yelled an insult. He pulled a weapon from his belt and waved it around, ordering the officers to stay away from his home. They called for backup and positioned themselves safely behind their vehicle. "Place your weapon on the ground and lie down. We don't want to hurt you, but you need to listen to us right now." In that moment of anger, he reacted without thinking. He aimed his weapon and began firing at the deputies. They didn't shoot back at first, hoping he would stop without causing harm. But when a bullet narrowly missed a deputy, their response changed. One bullet hit him in the shoulder, and another struck his hip, throwing him to the ground. Still yelling threats, the deputies warned the incoming units that he was armed and had fired at them. More sirens and lights announced the arrival of 2 additional police vehicles. From a safe distance, Deputy Gibson instructed him, "Drop your weapon and raise your hands. We don't want to hurt you more, but if you fire again, we have to act." By now, the pain was overwhelming, and he realized how serious his situation was. He didn't want to end up hurt or worse on the sidewalk. He was part of a well-known family who had always held power. Weakly, he tossed aside his weapon, raised the only hand he could move, and pleaded, "Don't shoot, I give up. Please help me." What a Christmas morning it was. The large fir tree in the lodge was surrounded by gifts. Many were for the pundits, or the grandparents, but most were for Will's children, who had already received one special gift for each of the 12 days of Christmas. The grandmothers fussed over the gifts, worried he was spoiling the kids. But he reminded them that he hadn't been able to celebrate any special occasions with them for over 15 months, so he felt justified in making up for lost time. The grandmothers, along with Lila and Lena, had prepared a hearty Christmas feast that would last for 2 meals through the day. Woody's old girlfriend, Samantha Parker, spent the day with him, often sitting on his lap or close by. They went into his house together in the afternoon. Samantha returned on December 16th, after school let out for winter break. She worked as an elementary school teacher, and they quickly got back together. Now they were always together, and she was looking for jobs in Pleasanton ISD, which was near Woody's ranch, for the next school year. Sarah spent Christmas morning and afternoon alone, crying and remembering better days before she was tempted by wealth and power. She had spent the night before celebrating with her children and parents, but now they were all with Will. Will was the person she had loved since childhood, but had left for Donnie. She wondered what she had been thinking, so she cried even more. Meanwhile, Donnie was stuck in a hospital bed in San Antonio, feeling embarrassed. He had a urinary catheter and had to use a bedpan. But despite these troubles, he felt it was better than being in jail. He was scheduled for shoulder surgery on the 27th, and while that wasn't a Christmas gift, it was the closest thing he would get this year. His hip replacement would have to wait for months after some physical therapy for his shoulder. He reminded himself that he was safe in the hospital for now, even if he knew jail awaited him after his trial. He wished he hadn't gone after Sarah just to hurt Will. The Billy Goat Hill pundits drew a large crowd by the San Antonio River, and the local ABC television station aired their performance live for New Year's Eve. The audience cheered all night, but the loudest applause came when Will brought Lila up from her keyboard, placed her in a chair that appeared on stage, knelt down, and asked her to marry him. The crowd went wild along the river and in homes across South Texas watching on TV. She said yes, and then Will sang a love song he had written for her. The fame of the BGH pundits grew even more as the new year approached. Later, they hosted a fun gathering for their friends on Super Bowl Sunday on top of Billy Goat Hill, which only added to their story. This tale, however, focused on Will's heartbreak and how he sought to make things right. That chapter was now closed. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.